CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am J Rule, or Justin, and joining alongside me here is
Derek, or Derek Cronus, and today we have another guest with us. We have Francesca Liliana, who is here to talk Malazan with us, an author in her own right, and a Malazan scholar as well. So we're definitely excited to have you on today and talk to you.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Scholar is it's a word I aspire to be, but not quite. But I will do my best.
Well, I think you're much more there than we are. We're like the Malazan toddlers, I guess. So just kind of dipping our toes. So I've got your book here. If some people will see the video here. Yeah, maybe before we get going into things, you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your book, I guess maybe some of your history with Malazan, that type of thing.
Yeah, so I have been just like writing for as long as I can remember, but it has been most recently like my dream to like be an author and everything. And I started writing East Reach, I want to say like 3 years ago, and then I published it last year. And it has been a whirlwind since then. It's been really cool. A lot of doors opening, and like just within the community, like having other author friends and everything. And she has been my pride and joy, Useless Reach. And I am currently in the middle of writing book 2, and that has been fun. Yeah, so it's been really fun. And I have been reading. I started reading Malazan. I want to 2 years ago, and I started it in November of not last year, but the previous year, and then I finished it, I want to say around December of last year, and then now I've been continuing reading the Ice novels, and by finishing Malazan, I mean I finished the main 10-book series, and now I'm working on all of the other Malazan books in the series. I have most recently finished the novels of the Malazan Empire by Ian Esselmont, and that was really good. And I am in the middle of the first book of the Carcanis trilogy, The Forge of Darkness, which has been mind-blowing. I mean, just mind-blowing. Absolutely phenomenal book. It's insane. But I have been just loving Malazan. It's my favorite series. I want to talk about it all the time. I want to word vomit to it about anybody who shows it the slightest interest. So I'm really excited and happy to be here.
Okay.
I don't know why we waited so long to have you on. It was, I saw you commented on Bearded Darkness's posts, and I'm like, well, why didn't I think of this sooner? Like, why hadn't I reached out to you? So I'm glad it finally worked out, and it came together pretty quick. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it's great. I'm super grateful. Thank you so much for having me on.
You know what's really cool is you started Malazan the same time we did. Around the same time we did. And we're still only on the 3rd book.
That's okay. I mean, Malazan is very dense. I mean, it is just, there's so much packed into each book that, like, when I tell people, like, oh, how, like, they ask me, like, oh, how far are you into your book currently? And I'm like, I'm at chapter 3. And chapter 3 is, like, a quarter of the way into the book. Like, it's, like, and it's like a novella in its own right. So it's so dense. There's a lot going on in there. So the speed at which you're reading Malazan is whatever speed works for you, because you need to be able to understand so much that's happening in there. And whether you do that fast or slow, like you just gotta ride with it. You can't force yourself into Malazan. You gotta ease yourself into it.
Some very encouraging words. I don't know if I would say our pace is my preferred pace, but we do it for the entertainment, I guess you could say.
I don't think I couldn't handle doing, like, I could read more than one chapter, but like talking about it, I would struggle, I think.
Oh, for sure.
More than one chapter at a time.
Yeah. When I was reading The Wheel of Time, I would read like a chapter or two. I mean, granted, those were not as long as some of the chapters in here, but I would read like a chapter or two and then put it down. But then the next day I would pick up where I left off and just keep going. Like every day I would be reading. So it would make the books go by a lot quicker.
Well, should we get started? I think we're going to have a lot of fun. This will be a good episode. I think we got a lot to talk about here. So we ready to plop on in here, Justin?
Yeah, but before we get started, Derek.
Ooh, this is a good segue. We didn't even plan
that. In today's episode, we'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize Silverstone's books. Check out their website at silverstonebooks.com, where they have a large selection of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror books, with many of them being options, or with many, obviously it's been a minute, with the option of many signed copies at very reasonable prices. The store carries a large number of indie authors, so help us help them in supporting self-published authors. Also, they've been gracious enough to give us a promo code for 10% off your next order. That code is DJ Quest, all in capital letters. So check out their site and pick up a book and save some cash.
And I believe that is where I got your book. I don't know if it's signed. I don't remember. It's up to look. I don't think it is, but that's okay. Oh, I got a book plate.
Yeah, I did. I did send them book plates.
Gotcha. That works just as well for me. So, our patrons here in order of subscription, we have Jan the Picker, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien the Rock of Faces, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Calvin He Who Witnessed, Livia the Malazan Potato, and Aaron Mott Irregular. Thank you guys. Love interacting with you guys, chatting, having fun. It's a good time. And I was thinking about this, Justin. We've got our shield anvil. We're lacking a destriant and mortal sword, so we need those to protect our little chain of dogs here.
Yeah, I like how you're integrating the two books. That's great. Yes, for sure, absolutely. We need many mortal swords for the various gods that we are. I'm just kidding. That was. That was very quick Ben-like. Yeah. Well, the epigraph for the Memories of Ice subbook is first in, last out, motto of the Bridge Burners. We've heard that a few times so far, and I think that there's definitely some undercurrents of meaning there. However, we only have 3 books of information, so... Okay, and then the epigraph for... was chapter 21 here is your friend's face might prove the mask the daub found in subtle shift to alter the once familiar visage or the child who formed unseen in private darkness as you wild oblivious to reveal cruel shock as a stone through a temple's pain. To these there is no armor on the soul, and upon the mask is writ the bold word, echoed in the child's eyes, a sudden stranger to all you have known. Such is betrayal. Death vigil of Sorulin Minar Othal.
I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah, it got me blanking very as well.
Makes me think of the Mhybe, I think.
Yeah, I kind of get like Night of Death as well, kind of vibes from this too, but I'm sure that after... Yeah.
I can definitely see that being like the Mhybe with the line, or the child who formed unseen in private darkness while you willed oblivious. That sounds pretty Mhybe to me.
Yeah. I was hoping that you were going to get to moderate a debate here today, Francesca, between Justin and I, but unfortunately Justin has decided to come around and see things from my point of view here.
I,
That's later on.
You were able to convince him.
Which I'm glad I was able to do, but I was like like I was building this up. I was so excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to argue with Justin because it's been a while since we've really disagreed hard on something, and I was kind of looking forward to that back and forth. But
I still have the way that I used to think. So if you want, I can totally still do it. I do have some questions. I've got some holes in your theory.
What was it you guys were debating?
The night of
Night of Death.
Oh, okay. No. I have a very strong stance on that.
Yeah. I'm assuming
okay.
she can't help because she's read the series. So she knows who the Night of Death is.
So when
it's pretty it's pretty obvious in my opinion about who it is in this chapter. It's like a reveal in I think. And when I was reading it with my buddy, because I read it with another group of people, and we all came to the same conclusion at the same time. So I've always thought that this was like a reveal chapter for that. But if you guys don't want me to go too much into it, then I won't. But
I mean, I definitely think that here we are. We're probably going to debate right now before we get started. So maybe we should wait. But the problem with someone such as myself is that I am such a detail person that like I fall for Erickson's subversions very easily because I'm so focused on that one thing that was said, which may or may not have been answered, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I guess we can wait. We can wait until we get into it. But the few holes that I have, which maybe Francesca, you can clarify without clarifying, if that makes any sense.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
To me, it sounds like there is an answer there. So I'm happy.
I mean, if we get it right, or if Derek gets it right, so to speak, go ahead and yeah, that works.
Okay, we got a little bit till we get there, but I'll start us off here with our first section. Brian led his horse near what was left of the East Watch Redoubt, looking behind one last time at Capustan's broken walls.
I'm celebrating the start of the section.
Oh, okay. I was reading and I saw movement out of the side of my eye. It was very distracting.
Sorry.
You're good. Black paint dried down the side of Prince Jalarkit's palace, a symbol of the city in mourning. However, the next rain would wash it all away, and from what Paran had heard, the city never mourned long. The bridge burners were moving out from the east gate. Paran thought, first in, last out. Ansi was in the lead with Picker, close behind, and they looked to be arguing. Behind them, the soldiers of other squads were all intermingled, marching in no particular order. He wondered about that. He knew every surviving bridge burner by name and their faces. The marching of armies was a timeless thing, Paran thought. Paran heard a horse on his side. It was Silver Fox. He said it would have been better if they continued to avoid each other. Silver Fox said that sounded agreeable. However, something had happened, and it wasn't what Paran thought it was. It was her mother, who is now missing, and no one else had apparently seen anything at all. That, and she can't question the whole army. Paran asked if she could use her Talant Imus to assist. Silver Fox said nothing and frowned. Paran said they must not be happy with her. Silver Fox said this wasn't the issue. She had sent them, along with the Talant Eye, across the river. Paran said they were able to scout the area on their own. Silver Fox snapped, saying that was enough, and she didn't need to explain herself. Paran wondered why she was asking for his help in that case. Silver Fox said she wasn't asking for help. She was asking if he knew anything. Paran asked if she had asked Krupp about it. Silver Fox said he was just as surprised as her, and she believed him. Paran told her people had a bad habit of underestimating Cole. He was capable of pulling this off on his own. Silver Fox said he didn't seem to understand the seriousness of the situation, the severity of kidnapping her mother. Paran cut her off, saying that she had left her mother in their care. No, not left, but abandoned. Paran had no doubt that Cole and Murillo took their duty seriously, with all the compassion for the Mhybe that she is missing. He says to think about it from their point of view. They care for her day in and day out, watching her wither away, and then they see her daughter, Silver Fox, but only at a distance, who is ignoring her own mother. So they decide to try and find someone who can care for her, or at least give her a dignified death. Kidnapping is taking someone away from someone else. The Mhybe has been taken, But taken from who? The answer is no one. Silver Fox lost color in her face and took a moment before responding. She told Paran that he had no idea what lay between them. Paran said it appeared she didn't know how to forgive, not her mother or herself. Guilt had become a chasm. She cut him off, saying that was rich, especially coming from him. Paran said he had done his climb down and had begun his ascent up the other side. Things had changed for the both of them. Silver Fox said he had turned his back on her and buried his feelings. Paran said he still loved her, but he had convinced himself that whatever they had between them was more than it really was, and of all the weapons one can turn on themselves, guilt was the most deadly. It can make one's past unrecognizable. Silver Fox thanked him for clearing things up, but had it not occurred to him that clinical examination is also an obsession, and what's being dissected should be dead first? That's the point with dissection, after all. Paran said that's what his tutor had told him years ago as well, but he can examine himself, every feeling, until the abyss swallows the world, and still be no closer to understanding those feelings within him because they are ever-changing, and they are also not immune to the outside world. Silver Fox said this change of his was amazing, and she hardly recognized him. Paran looked at her and told her he finds her all too recognizable. She says that is ironic. He sees a woman he once loved. She sees a man she's never known. Paran said there were too many tangled threads for irony. Silver Fox said perhaps sadness then. He said they had wandered far from the subject at hand. He did not know anything of her mother's disappearance, but he was confident that Cole and Murillo would do all they could for her. Silver Fox said he was a fool if he believed that. All they had done is seal her fate. Paran said she was an old and dying woman. Leave her be. This irritated Silver Fox. She said he didn't know what he was talking about. Her mother is trapped in a nightmare. Hunted, and she had stayed closer to her mother than anyone had realized. Paran said if she was in a nightmare, then living was a curse, and the most merciful thing that could be done was to let her go. Silver Fox damned him and said she would not abandon her mother and left on her horse. Paran wanted to understand what was going on, wanted Silver Fox to tell him so that he could see whatever was going on was something else and not betrayal. This couldn't be Tattersail doing all this. It must be Nightchill. He continued with his thoughts, thinking he must have thought there was more there than she did. After all, she was an older woman who had seen her share of love and heartbreak, where he had hardly lived yet. What was, then, is no more. She had become colder than the Talan Imus she commanded, a worthy master.
God damn. I enjoyed this section, but it left me very heartbroken at the same time. For some reason, I just wanted Silver Fox, slash Tattersail, but that doesn't seem to be really the case anymore, and Paran to just ride off into the sunset. But I guess that's kind of the idealist in me.
Yeah, I don't know if we're getting that happy ending, buddy.
No.
Yeah. Romance and Malazan. That doesn't. It's funny because it's with Tattersail and Karen. So like when they first met, it was a very quick thing, right? But it hit pretty hard. And that's the thing that Erikson does with a lot of his characters is that within 2 or 3 sentences, like of meeting a new character, you just automatically love them or you automatically hate them. Like they're very quick with the way that he writes his characters. And with Tattersail and Perrin, it was quick, but you kind of like have that lingering feeling of like, oh gosh, Silver Fox has Tattersail in her, so possibly it's still Tattersail, but like it really solidified in this section for me when I was reading that Silver Fox and Tattersail are completely 2 different people. And it's very evident here when she is talking to him and kind of arguing with him about the Mhybe.
It seems like it's hard for him to separate the two. Like I think he's still hoping that it's Tattersail there, and it's just not.
Well, I wonder. I mean, I know that in the previous I think it was a previous chapter, someone had said that the 3 of them or the 4 of them kind of walk in tandem and they all agree with each other. I don't know if I quite believe that. I think that Tattersail and what is left of her is being cowed by the stronger force, which seems to be Nigel at this point. So me, when I'm thinking and reading through this chapter, I'm almost, or this section specifically, I'm almost wondering if like Tattersail's like screaming, you know, kind of like those shows where like you have a demon possess somebody, but there's like the very faintness of that person still there, and like you get a perspective from them, like, you know, banging on the glass, so to speak, like no, 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 and just kind of like that seems to, I get that mental image with specifically Tattersail here. So whether that's true or not, I guess I don't care, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Gotcha. Well, I don't think I had too many thoughts that I typed up here, but we can just kind of start at the top and go down.
Yeah.
You know, they're talking about the paint going down the side of the walls of Capustan, and it just made me think, like, did the princes not live very long in Capustan? Like, is this maybe like a semi-regular thing, you know, and then they just get over it quick when it rains and move on? I don't know. It's kind of a dark thought, but that's what I thought.
Well, I think it's supposed to signify that the tower is not, it wasn't made by mortal man. That really hasn't been yet revealed, but it seems that no matter what you do to it, it always goes back to like its original. Like it's been assailed before, and it never falters or never breaks, or you know what I mean.
I heard everything you said, but
you got nothing to say.
I don't have any sort of response there. Francesca, I know you've got some thoughts here. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just kind of like what I was saying before is like when I really like the moment. I always like these really small moments that not Aragon. Oh my gosh, Erickson.
Yeah,
that is a totally different story. Okay. Erickson writes just these really small moments that give you insight into like the character's mindset when you're not really in their mindset. And when Silver Fox snapped at Perrin, like saying, I don't have to explain myself, like it just like it reminds me that she's still a kid. Like she's still like she's got these three people in her, but she is like she hasn't had the chance to actually like be a kid or grow up normally. Like she has this immense power, and she hasn't really lived that long to learn how to like control it really, or really know what to do with it, or like just like she knows what to do with it, but like she doesn't know how to go about it. And then she has these feelings that she doesn't know how to distinguish, and it's just really sad for me to see her in such a state because of the fact that, you know, she is connected with Tattersail, which is somebody that we really love in the series. And so you have that hope of like, oh, is she still Tattersail, or, you know, but like, it's just, I don't know. I really loved that moment because it seemed like such a adolescent moment for her. And I feel like that Perrin kind of saw that too, where he was kind of like, okay. Like, I think he's starting to separate the two, where like it hurt, but he's kind of starting to realize that she's not Tattersail. And this conversation between the two of them really like solidifies that for me. I just really liked that small moment.
Sure.
I definitely think I wouldn't have picked up on that, so it's very cool.
Do you think that obviously that has a connection too with why she no longer incessantly reaches out to him, but do you feel like that when she was, do you think that was just a way of like feeling around for those emotions that potentially were still lingering between the three? Or it seems very abrupt that like all of a sudden we have the second gathering and now she's just this cold, calculated, like I am only focusing on these parts, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you have three people inside of you, I feel like you need to try to simplify things for yourself and try to focus on the task at hand. I think that she is also like, it's a little bit later in the section, but like they're in an argument about Mhybe about her mom, and she has been very absent from her mom's situation and trying to take herself out of the equation, because I think she feels like if she's close to her or anything, she's just going to end up hurting her more, which is like, it's just this lose-lose situation where like if she's near her mom, then draining the life out of her mother, but then if she goes away, her mom feels like, oh, what did I do all of this for? Why aren't you paying attention to me? Why aren't you loving me? Kind of thing. Like it's just this lose all around situation for her. And I think that the feelings that she has inside of her, she doesn't know what is her feelings and what are the three souls inside of her. And I think she's still trying to distinguish that. I don't think that her feelings for Perrin are her own. I think that they're Tattersail's, and this is just like this is residual feelings inside of her. And she's trying to figure out where the line is drawn within herself.
Makes sense. I appreciate that very elaborate answer.
Sorry.
No, that's great. I mean, I this is one of the things where like you're showing your scholarism, even though you're very modest about that. We appreciate all of that type of insight because, like, again, yes, we're reading the chapter 2 times and then summarizing it once, but there's still a lot of stuff that like we are not going to contemplate until like we think about it more. And that's usually what happens during these episodes is like it's kind of a culmination of the summarizing, and the reading is where we kind of get to discuss it amongst ourselves, which obviously we're limited because we only have our first time knowledge. But then you bring in someone like yourself who has read the series and has kind of gone through the overall journey, and can kind of like plop things in here and there. So it helps us, honestly. I wish that we could give back in some way, shape, or form, but
No. This is great. Just being able to talk about. I've never I've always talked about the series like with my friends who have read it with me, but it's over usually through like voice messages, like on Instagram, where it's like 10 seconds long, and you send like 20 of them at a time, and that's kind of like the extent of the type of conversations that I've had about the series. So like the thoughts and that I'm sharing currently right now and everything, I'm trying to share them in a way where I know what I was feeling when I had read that chapter. And so, but kind of with the all around insight that I have with the rest of the series, because obviously I'm not like here to spoil anything or anything like that. So like I'm trying to give you like the best way that I was thinking as I was reading the chapter with that before everything else, trying to at least.
no, I appreciate it. We appreciate it. It's a good thing. Yeah.
I think we both understand how hard it would be to like not accidentally let something slip, having read the whole series. So,
And I'm sure that, at this point in time, I don't really see. I know Derek has a bet that Calor is going to potentially kill Silverfox. I don't know if that's. I feel like she's too high stakes for that.
we're running out of time for that to happen, though.
Right, exactly. So I think that Derek might be getting a pie at the end of this book, but I guess we'll find out because we still have like a little over 200 pages left.
What? So you bet pies on who's gonna die, and then you guys make each other a pie. That's great.
It's not necessarily who dies. It's just about like things.
We might have like a theory.
Or a theory. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So in Deadhouse Gates, I thought the Book of Raraku was just like a decoy ploy by Mebra and the like Red Blades or whatever that was, because it just seemed like Kalam met this person. He just suddenly happens to give him a book, but he's also like a spy. It just seemed like really setty uppy, but I guess it really is the book. So I took a pie. And Derek had predicted that Shaik was not dead, although it wasn't. It was just Shaik reborn. It wasn't really a that character came back to life, but you still got that one. So yeah. I took 2 pies. So I'm a little pied out. So I haven't really. Derek made the bet, and I'm like, cool. I don't have anything to lose, so I might as well just go with it.
That's so funny. I love that.
Yeah. I put all bets aside for a little bit. 2 pies is not fun.
I just have theories, and then if I'm right, I just write in the group chat in all caps. I love it when I'm right. That's my pie.
Yes, we have those wins, although they are very small. Like at the beginning, like when we were reading the prologue to this book, we were like Sister of Cold Nights. And then we put it together that it was Night Show. So, like, that was a win. The Imperial Warren in the prologue, that was a win. That was something that, like, we kind of caught up on. So, while we don't get 98% of the stuff, we do get some of the other stuff. So,
That's part of the fun, though, is being surprised by Erickson and having your expectations thwarted. So, but it's a good thing.
oh, for sure. Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, when we started this podcast, we just kind of wanted to give everybody out there, you know, scholars in Malazan, as well as like the first time readers, like one, you can kind of maybe relive vicariously the first time you read it again, as well as those who are following along with us can kind of partake in the enjoyment of discovering some of these things. So
That's great.
yeah. But anyway, let's get back to the content at hand.
You had some other thoughts here that I would love to hear from you on.
Yeah, so I love this part where Perrin is like once again like talking with Silver Fox and kind of berating her almost, where he says that kidnapping is taking someone away from someone else, and the Mhybe has been taken, but taken from who? The answer is no one, and it just breaks my heart. Okay, reading the Mhybe's point of view in Memories of Ice is probably like in the top, I would say it's number 2 of the most painful point of views that I've ever been in Malazan. Like, it was just physically painful for me to be in her perspective because of what she was going through and like just how alone she felt. And it was mind numbing how emotional those chapters were. And when Perrin says that and just kind of like really like tells Tattersail, not Tattersail, Silver Fox, that like what is Cole and Murillo? Cole and Murillo? Cole and Murillo taking the Mhybe away from? Nobody. Like, nobody is caring about her. You don't care about her. You're not around her. And she's all alone. They're just trying to do the best by her because she's this lost cause to everybody else. She's just sitting there decaying and dying and nobody gives a shit. Like, it's just so sad, and it like breaks my heart. And to have Perrin say this to Silver Fox is very satisfying, because you want someone to say this to her. Like, you've been dying for someone to say this to her, and finally it's being said, and she can't really deny it anymore, I feel like. So I just really love that moment.
But like, it's like kind of interesting, and it's how it seemed like both whatever remains of Tattersail or Silver Fox and then the Mhybe, they both seem to have like abandonment feelings towards one another. I don't know if you feel that way, Justin, but it seems like a lot of things could have been healed if one of them would have just approached the other and said, I'm sorry for, whatever.
Well, I think
maybe you wouldn't have that pain.
Right. But I think the hard part is I don't think that Silver Fox feels abandoned by her mother. Maybe there's a small part of it, but I think that she more or less is like curious about her relationship with the Talani Mass. Kind of how we got at the second gathering there, when Pran Cole kind of like apologizes for him not being around, kind of like, like daddy issues, right? Is kind of how I took that. And she seemed to have such a more stronger and visceral reaction to the abandonment of her quote unquote dad than she did of just these like very, I don't know, almost like small remarks about the abandonment from her mother, if that makes any sense. But like, we know that like something is up with Silver Fox and her mother, right? Like, it's kind of been growing to this type of culmination, and we get a little bit more of that as we kind of go through this chapter. So I don't know if she's necessarily forgot about her mom. While physically, yes, she has abandoned her, but she does have all of these tools at her arsenal that like we are not even aware of. later in the chapter, she disappears into like a fucking hill. So, I mean, and Corlot even says, like, hey, yeah, she's using paths I didn't even know existed anymore. So I think that there's definitely something going on between Silver Fox and the Mhybe, but I think that her issues are mainly with the Talan because she kind of, well, she did almost mirror what she did with her mom to the Talan, right? Like they just want to be put to rest. Like they just want to be done. And I see a lot of similarities between the Mhybe and the Talani Mass. Like
Interesting.
they both want to be done. They just want to be
Yeah.
done. But Silver
I
Fox
can
will
definitely see
not
that.
let them go.
Yeah, that's a good thought.
And the Mhybe is looking like a Talani Mass more and more each day.
Interesting.
Okay, anyway, yes. We can probably move on. 45 minutes on section 1 is going to end up to be a long episode.
Yeah, I don't know, Francesca, if you kind of covered this other point already a little bit or not, or if you want to take that and we'll just keep going here.
Yeah, I did. Like, it's just when him and Silver Fox are talking about their feelings, it just like solidifies for me that Tattersail and Silver Fox they're just not the same person. So like that was my only thought in that little section there, but I kind of already covered that before. So
Sure.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. The hard part is like, while it's right there in your face, like part of me still wants to like not acknowledge it to be true.
Oh yeah, no,
Like,
all of Malazan is just denial. I mean, you just deny everything because you just don't like what's happening. You just live in a state of denial. I'm like, no, it's not happening. I mean, I read it.
Right. This is why Derek and I argue so much, is because we're in denial about
I guess, yeah.
I'm not very good at acceptance. I have realized this while reading Malazan. I'll close a book and I'm like, that didn't happen. It didn't happen.
I'm glad we got that to look forward to. Paran saying that he still loved her, but I mean, man, just letting her down gently, huh? Just trying not to break her heart, I guess, or he is, but she's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I don't know.
He's just tired. I think Perrin is just tired. He's got so many other things going on, and it's like this is just one other thing that's piled on that he's just like, I gotta go. Like, I got other things I gotta do.
That one time in Pale is no longer worth it.
Yeah.
It's like she's being stalked by 3 other people, and they're all hitting him up on his socials, giving him a bunch of shit about it. So,
and Silver Fox comes back and says that, Paran's changed and she doesn't even hardly recognize him. And I was just like, not being sarcastic here, huh? It just seems like they're both just taking body shots at each other, just going for the knockout.
well, I mean, it's understandable. They've been festering about these feelings like almost the entire book, and it just gets worse and worse as the book goes on because these feelings of not even really being near to them. Like, if you remember, Paran at the very beginning was very like skittish because, I mean, he still had these feelings, but Silver Fox physically was like a young child, So like, he's gone through all of these stages, and so is she, right? Like, I mean, she's battling 3 other people inside of her mind. She's got so many different like I almost kind of imagine it as like your sole responsibility is to drive, but you've got 3 other people in the car telling you how to do it, and they're all telling you to do it in a different way. And like at some point, you just got to be like, I need you to shut the fuck up, Like that's the part of like Silver Fox where like, yeah, I admit I had feelings for you, but like I can't listen to you anymore because I got to focus on this one task.
Right. It's a good point too, Justin.
But yeah, the sarcasm was real, and as sad as it was kind of hilarious to see them just take punches
Sparring.
at it. Yeah, exactly. They both make some good solid points, and it's just like, okay, well, the point where like Paran's like, I don't even want to talk about this anymore. We're not even on the subject of why you approached me. So like, let's just get on with it, right? He's ready to just move on. He doesn't want to fester anymore. He just wants to go about his master of the deck ways.
Yeah, it just like starts out as this very like barbed conversation where they're just taking, like you said, shots at each other, and then it kind of slowly turns a little bit more serious when she says like she hardly recognizes him, and he's like, well, I find you all too recognizable, and that, you know, it's strange how that he sees a woman he once loved and she sees a man she's never known, which is just like chef's kiss poetry. Like I just love it, that dichotomy. The tragic nature of it all, and you kind of like feel with that line, I feel like you kind of like see just how far like just how far a gap there is between the two, but at the same time they can see each other clearly, but it's just too far of a gap for them to be able to cross to each other, and it just turns into something really sad. And then Perrin's just like, okay, I've had enough. We're not even like talking about what we need to be talking about, so let's move on.
Right.
Get back on track. Yeah, that kind of leads into my point. You know, what does Silver Fox say here? She says it isn't irony. You know, it's sadness, and it's just kind of, you know, it makes me think. You know, it's like one of life's great mysteries. You know, what could have been. You know, they both, I'm sure, must be thinking it if things worked out differently.
Yeah, it's like a long distance relationship.
A little bit, yeah. And then the irony. I guess I don't necessarily remember why I jotted this thought down, but Bran said she's an old and dying woman. Leave her be. I don't know what I was going for there. No, I had a thought at one point, but it's lost on me now.
I think it's just Bran is empathizing more with the Mhybe than she is, or he is with Silver Fox.
Sure.
Which makes
Maybe
sense.
that was it.
You know, at one point in time, like he probably would have debated, you know, and there's possible that there were moments throughout this book that maybe we just didn't talk about of his internal monologue where he kind of debates like he justifies her actions towards her mom because he's in love with her.
Solid. My last thought here is just this line: "What was then is no more," and I just really like that. You know, sometimes you read those lines in books that just really hit home, and that was kind of one of them for me.
I would agree.
Anything else here? I guess your next one's Francesca. I don't know if they're for the next section or if they were at the end of this one.
Oh, I see. No, just the last part of this one section when he has the thought that she's become colder than the Talani mass. She commanded a worthy master. And I just jotted out the thought, when you take your job so seriously that you're bad at it. Because she's not doing so hot right now. And I don't know. It's just this sad thought that, you know, from what we have said before about Silver Fox, and then she's just being so cold. It's like even colder than the Talani mass, which is pretty damn cold. So
yeah, I don't think she's going to be making the list of, you know, top places to work or anything like that anytime soon. So
yeah.
Did you guys catch when Silver Fox is talking about her mom and kind of explaining to Paran the nightmares that she's trapped in? And she says, hunted even, and she had stayed closer to her mother than anyone had realized. This hunted is a foreshadowing to the night of death.
Maybe. I guess I can see that.
Just hold on to that. And then when I read that section, just remember that this part, okay? Because like when we read this, we're thinking the Talani, right? Like we know that that's kind of like a thing, and the Talani are chasing her, they're trying to like tell her something, etc., etc. But just remember the hunted part from this section.
Sure.
Also, one thing that I noticed about this chapter is that each section seems to kind of leave off on like a very ominous note, and maybe you'll see that as we kind of continue, but it was just something I noticed particularly in my sections. Like even this next one, it leaves off in kind of an ominous note.
I will pay attention.
From what I remember from reading this book for the first time, I had not experienced anxiety reading a book as much as I experienced when I was reading Memory Spice. Every single chapter was a bomb going off for me. I just felt this deep sense of dread throughout the entire book. Like I remember it so vividly. And it's just like I agree, like every section, every chapter really leads it off and just this weight on you while you're reading. And I remember that very vividly while I was reading Memories of Life.
Oh, cool.
All right. Well, I guess, are we ready to move on to section 2 here?
Yeah, I think so. We had a pretty healthy discussion there.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
good.
I feel like that section was very heavy, and some of these are not as heavy, so hopefully that means I won't have a ton to edit. So that's cool. I'll take it. All right, section 2 here. While Brood's army were crossing the Caitlin River, Itkovian watched them as he wandered along the shoreline by himself. Glancing up, he saw a figure on the beach ahead of him. The man was busy painting, and it seemed he was talking to himself. Upon nearing closer, though, he realized the artist was not talking to himself, but rather a big toad seated next to him. Itkovian apologizes for interrupting, but the artist interrupts him and asks if he is the one called Itkovian, defender of Capustan. The former shield anvil said that he didn't defend Capustan, to which the artist said that everyone had heard his words at the parley, and they were such idiocy. Mockingly, the artist tells Itkovian that when he paints him in his scene, he'll make sure to depict that failure. Itkovian asks if the man was Malazan. The artist says that he was, as Brood doesn't give a shit about history, but the old emperor, he did indeed. Artist with every campaign. The artist introduces himself as Ormulogan of Li Hang and his Ted as Gumbel, his greatest critic. Ormulogan addresses the toad about how Itkovian stands and his posture. He tells Gumbel to look closer at the man and sees that he is not yet done. Itkovian was taken aback by this. The artist grinned and said that he knew all too well for Itkovian's comfort. He then continues talking to the toad, and they squabble back and forth for a few beats before Itkovian interrupts to ask him more about the old emperor's practice of having artists on the field of battle to record historical events. Itkovian then asked if one arm was outlawed, then who does he really paint for? Ormuligan announces that the record of the outlawry was essential. He had no other choice than to accompany the army. What else was he supposed to do? Paint sunsets on cobbles in Jerusalem? As far as the artists in Pale? Gumbel interrupted to say that those artists in Pale hated him. The artist retorts that he hated them as well, as he didn't see any art that was worth talking about. Ormuligan and Gumbel bicker more. Itkovian left them to their insults and continued to wander further down the shoreline, forgetting to look at the canvas that Ormuligan had painted. Okay, so maybe it's not at the end, but that was ominous. Once the armies were across the river, they would then divide. Dujek headed up one direction while Brood went another. Itkovian would accompany the army that was headed for Lest, which consisted of the Greyswords, the Tistandi, the Rivi, and the Igris Bargast. Brood remained in overall command. Itkovian thinks to himself that the factions surrounding Brood were confusing in its organizational structure. On the other hand, the Malazan employed a more familiar hierarchy that Itkovian was used to. He heard horse hooves riding up behind him. Whiskey Jack reined in and said hello to Itkovian. Whiskey Jack asks if he's seen Silver Fox or the two Marines accompanying her. Itkovian said that they rode past him, riding east. As Whiskey Jack was explaining the details, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. The two Marines approached their commander, and Whiskey Jack asked where Silver Fox was. They explained that they followed her until Silver Fox rode straight into a hill, and they lost her. Whiskey Jack was silent, and then told the Marines to accompany him as they were getting ready to cross the river. One of the Marines remarked that on their way out, they saw Gumbel and his pet. Whiskey Jack explains that he had sent the two back to the wagon with instructions on his collection. Itkovian was curious as to how many paintings Ormuligan had painted since Pale. One of the Marines says that there was at least 10 to 12 years worth of paintings. Dujek this and Dujek that. Even Whiskey Jack tells them enough, and they need to get gone, as Whiskey Jack needs a private word with Itkovian. The Marines apologized to the former shield anvil as they were just joking about the exaggerated scene of Capustan. The Marines leave, and Whiskey Jack apologizes to Itkovian. To Itkovian's surprise, Whiskey Jack dismounted and approached him. He stretched out his hand and shook Kovian's hand. Whiskey Jack thanked him and wished the former Shield Anvil were traveling with them so he could get to know the man better. Kovian responded that they would meet up in Marik. They released their grips. Whiskey Jack got back on his horse and then hesitated in asking if all Elin were like Itkovian. Itkovian shrugged and said that he was not unique. Whiskey Jack warns Itkovian to beware when a Lysine assails his homeland's borders. Itkovian asked if Whiskey Jack would be commanding those legions. Whiskey Jack grinned and then rode away. He had a sudden thought that they would not see each other again. He shook that dread from his thoughts. Okay, I lied. There is some ominous stuff at the end of that one too. But yeah, it was kind of a theme that I noticed, and like, wow, Francesca, this whole book kind of gave you this like pit of your stomach feeling. Like it wasn't until this chapter where I'm like, fuck, something's big is going to happen. That like feeling of dread.
Oh yeah, from the very beginning of this book, I had just this, I don't know what it was, but I just had this deep sense of dread throughout the entire thing. And I kept like, I remember going into like my buddy reading group going, something bad is going to happen. I can't stand it. Like I was like freaking out over there. But yeah, definitely in these sections, you can see by the end of each section, like there are just these really heavy notes to leave off on that just kind of give you a pause and go, I don't quite like the way that was phrased. Can you rewrite that for me, Erickson? You know?
I guess I haven't had that same feeling. The feeling you're describing, I felt a lot more in Dead House Gates than I have in this book.
Yeah, Dead House Gates. That one broke me. That one broke me big time.
Maybe that's why I don't feel that way for this book then. Because yeah, it was just like plummeting off a cliff. Different for me, I guess.
That's one of the beauties of Malazan is that everybody takes something different from it. So it's crazy how many people have like the different favorite books. Like my favorite is Memories of Ice. That's my favorite book in the series. But a lot of people like everybody's different. Everybody like some people really love Toll the Hound. Some people's favorite is Midnight Tides. Like Midnight Tides is a big favorite of a lot of people. It's such a great book. But and a lot of people like Memories of Ice, but like everybody's different. So that's the great thing is that you can take what you want from it, and everybody can have a different opinion about it, and that's fine because there's so much going on in these books. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I guess like the abstractness of 1 and 2, right? Not really focusing on the same characters, but a whole different cast, so to speak. I fell more in love with the characters from Dead House Gates than I did Gardens of the Moon. And now that we're back with the Gardens of the Moon cast, I almost kind of see them as like two different plays kind of converging in the same place, so to speak. So like, I guess my focus is like, so like, I'm kind of excited to get to House of Chains because like, if my theory is correct, 1 and 3 are like one after the other, 2 and 4 are kind of like one after the other. I'm excited to get back and see Duiker and like Felazin and Haboric, and while we got like little like tastes of them in this book, I don't know how to explain it. I liked that cast more. And while like Silver Fox and like kind of getting to know Quick Ben a little bit more intimately definitely helps kind of make a case for Memories of Ice, I still find myself going back to the characters of Dead House Gates.
Mm-hmm. I can totally see that. It's Dead House Gates is in my tops. Yes. My first is Memories of Ice, and then it is so I have two favorites, Dead House Gates and Toll the Hounds. I can't choose between the two, so I consider them both just number 2. And then it is Midnight Tides after that. So those are my top 3 that are actually my top 4.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, I'm excited to get to. I hear a lot of good things about Midnight Tides. We are, I don't know if you know, but we're going by publication order. So after we're done with this book, we're gonna do the Blood Follows novella of Bauchelain and Corvo Broach, and then after that, I believe is House of Chains, and then I think there's 2 more novellas after that. So we're just kind of we're intermixing the main 10 with the novels,
everything else.
And everything else. So
no, that's great. Yeah.
I know that you had a thought about the big toad here, Francesca.
I just like the toad. That's all. Like I don't really have like any like in-depth thoughts about it. I just really like Grumble.
I did is it Gumble or Grumble?
Gumble. Gumble.
Okay.
I think. Gumble.
I mean, I can see as like a critic of an artist, the name would be Grumble, but it says Gumble, you know, which makes me think of like a really big, gross piece of gum. And maybe that's what toads are big, gross pieces of.
I was thinking about this because I reread the chapter this morning, and I was like, is there like a weird talking animal or like animal companion in every book? Because we had Moby and who was he with in Gardens of the Moon? I don't even remember. And then he was in Deadhouse Gates, but then you had Donkey and Escort Poost and Megora, and now we've got this toad.
Yeah.
Is this a theme that continues throughout the series?
I didn't pay attention to that. If there was like a talking animal in every single book or not, but I find them to have they're always like fun to read. Like they're just little moments of levity that Erickson puts in there. Like they might not necessarily like contribute to the story in any way, but they're just fun to read. And I find Gumble just a fun moment of like, oh, I can let go of my anxiety for just a second.
I did like a reading double take when I read this for the first time. I'm like, is there seriously a fucking talking toad talking?
That's exactly what you
right now,
me.
You know, and yeah, see, and so it was like one of those things where I'm like, okay, I guess I can understand the reality of the situation. It is what it is, but like, I am confused as fuck. Like all of a sudden, you implant this thing. And you're like, where did this come from? You have all of these questions that don't get answered. And so you're like, all you can do is just be like, okay, there's a talking toad. Cool.
Just ride with it.
Right. You just ride with it. I really loved this section, really just because, like, I understood a lot of what the artist or Mulligan was talking about. When they're talking about the artists in Pale all hating him and he hated them, and it was because he didn't see any art that was worth talking about, like in the artistic culture. Like that is something that is very prevalent. There's a lot of artists that will draw inspiration from other artists, but then there are those artists that are like, that's not me, you know. And going to art school, one of the big things in the art history lesson that I took is that a lot of art is a responding to art that came previously to it. Like in the 50s, we had like the pop art with like the dots and all that kind of stuff. And in response to that, you had what was called Dada art, was just like this very intricate, like weird, kind of almost like fucked up, like messed up artwork. And then in a response to that, you had what was called minimalism in the 70s, where it was just like a painting of a square on top of a triangle or something like that. You know, so it's just interesting how you can kind of, you know, having that knowledge and like applying it to this artist was just, I don't know, it was cool. Like I connected with it.
I'm not an artist, so I don't have anything to say, Justin.
No, that's fine. It's all right. It's okay.
Well, that's awesome that you were able to find something to be able to identify inside of the book with like that. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then again, just this ominous tone as Mulligan and Itkovian, like when he leaves the conversation to go wander along the beach, which kind of makes me think of like those movies where like someone is depressed, so they're just walking on the beach and it's like really pretty out, and you know, all of those different things, because he's self-reflecting, right? Like he's just can't get out of his own damn head. And just this whole line of Itkovian forgetting to look at the canvas that Mulligan had painted. And I am like left wondering is this a hint to something? Is this like a Capustan siege depiction, even though later on we get confirmed that like the Marines were just joking about that? Or is this like the crossing? Did he quickly paint Itkovian there while they were talking? You know, like there's so many like insinuations that could be hinted at here, and I want to know what it is. Like, I want to look at these guys' paintings. I want a chapter where they're just talking about everything he's painted.
I was curious as to what he painted too, but I didn't think much deeper on it beyond that.
Yeah. And then in the part here where, again, Idkovian is kind of like walking along the beach, all moody and broody, right? And Idkovian thinks to himself about the factions surrounding Brood, and then kind of comparing them to the factions employed around the Malazans. And I like that Idkovian is so in his head, and that he's comparing and contrasting the two armies, and even to the point where he wonders if Brood is the way, or the Brood army is the way that it is because of the Malazans, right? Prior to joining up with each other. And I also find it interesting that he's going with the army whose hierarchy he's not used to. And then I'm wondering if this could potentially play to like his character development. Like he learns some new things type of stuff. You know, like he's so regimented. And now he's going with a company that kind of was forced to bring different factions in to help kind of fight off the Malazan invasion of Genabacchus.
I didn't catch that he was going that way. It's an interesting thought. I don't know what I could add to it for you.
It's all good. Like I said, I like details, so pick them out as best I can without making more work for myself in post. The other thought is that the Marines remarked that on their way out they saw Gumble and his pet. And I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that supposed to be the other way around? But I guess maybe not. And so are the Marines insinuating that the artist is the pet of the toad? And I just thought that was just...
That is a very funny moment. I do like that moment.
Yeah. The Marines are some good comic relief. Like,
oh, yeah.
But I could have swore that they were sisters. Are they not sisters? Because like I almost get the feeling that they like have sexual encounters with each other. But I thought that there was...
I honestly do not remember.
Because I remember there was like one scene where Whiskey Jack was talking to them about like his siblings, and yeah, I guess I don't recall either, but I could have swore that they were. Maybe they are. I don't know. Anyway,
I don't remember.
One of the first things that I remembered is when I first read this, I didn't catch that they were joking with Idkovian about depicting the Capustan siege. So I'm like, ooh, that must be what like Mulligan like had depicted and Idkovian didn't look at. But now I'm like, okay, what did he actually like paint?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could ask Erickson.
I mean, I think that would probably end up spoiling something.
Maybe.
I feel like it's too important to not come back to.
To be honest, I cannot remember if there was anything of significance to the painting. So I'm really no help here for that. But it does kind of like veer into like the thought that I had with this encounter with like the Marines joking about the painting and everything. I just love the moment that they're like joking around with him, and Whiskey Jack is just like, oh gosh, stop it. Like he went through some really awful shit in that place. Like you really shouldn't be joking about it like that. And then the Kovian's like, nah, bro, I'm good. Like this makes me feel like one of the gang, one of the bros, you know? So yeah. It just, it makes me so happy because Kovian has just such little reason or chance to smile or feel included, because I think throughout the book, correct me if I'm wrong, but throughout the book, Kovian really feels like an outsider and doesn't feel as included with everybody else, just because of like who he is and where he came from. He sees like his everything that happened at Capustan as a failure, and so he just has this underlining like judgment in his brain that everybody doesn't like him or anything. Not that he like really cares if anybody like really likes him. It's just like he just has this sense of like sadness and apartness from everybody else around him, and so him feeling this way with the Marines as they're joking with him makes him feel included. It makes him feel a little bit more worthy, and and the fact that he's with Whiskey Jack too, just these two men, I love Kobe and I love Whiskey Jack. These two men growing together is just, I love it. I love the bromance. This is what I live for. I live for the bromances. And I think that just these two in this scene is particularly touching, just because we don't get to see too much of them in together, I think. But like I said, it's been a long time since I've read the book, so it that you could tell me that I'm totally wrong, that they've had tons of scenes together. Yeah, it's really good. It just makes me want to hug them and never let them go.
I think you're pretty on point there.
And also, sorry, one more. When he says that the Marines only joke this way with somebody that like they respect, like they'll only be this way because they respect you. It's just like, ugh, right in my heart. Just like tear it right out.
They got his back.
Yeah, they do. They have his back, and then it just like, and then again, it goes into my next thought, which was this particular quote. Among the soldiers of the Empire, he said, where the worn gauntlet is for war and nothing other than war, to remain gauntleted when grasping the hand of another is the rarest of gestures. That just like, Whiskey Jack, you are a gentleman and a scholar and the actual love of my life, and you are just the best. Just the best. He's such a great character, and I just really love how he's able to connect with the Kovian in this scene and make him feel included and one of the bros. And it's just a great scene for me.
Which brings me to my last thought, is that the way that this section ends makes all of that kind of seem like nothing. You know, with him saying, or he has this sudden thought that they would not see each other again. It accentuates the bromance that you're so elaborately talking about, which is great. And at the same time, it like adds this like sense of dread and sadness to it, you know. And
it's kind of the Erickson way.
I know.
Like he gives you so much, and then with a single sentence, he just takes it all away. And he's like, "Yeah, this is great, but don't hold on too tightly," kind of thing, you know, like you just like, I don't know, Erickson just has this way of writing these incredible scenes that are really heartfelt and touching, and then within 2 sentences you're just kind of like, oh,
everything that I felt was a sham now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah. I'm if I'm being frank, like I'm kind of afraid to continue on at this point. Like this chapter makes me feel like I don't want to keep going. As much as I'm excited to read on, like at the same time, like kind of encapsulating this very phenomenon that we're talking about, I want to continue on, but now I'm like leery of it.
Yeah. Memories of Ice was really, I mean, there were other books in the Malazan world as well, but I just didn't feel it as strongly as I did when I was reading Memories of Ice, where like I was genuinely, as you said, afraid to continue reading, just the amount of dread that just kept building throughout the rest of the book. Like I never felt that way with any of my other books. I mean, I've only ever really felt that way with Erickson, where like I'm genuinely just like, I really don't want to read the next section. Like I want to, but I really don't want to.
And you know, I do plan on, like, once this epic quest has concluded, and I've said this like a million times throughout this podcast, is that I do plan on coming back and just reading it again. You know, I know that Erickson had wrote it partly the reasons that he wrote it was for the rereadability, and I definitely will want to go through and read it again in just more of a seamless fashion. Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts for that section. I thought that was well done.
All right. Section 3. Krupp said of course he would bless the company with his presence. Quickben sighed and said he took it the wrong way. It was a question and not an invitation. Krupp said he was impressed with the multitude of warrants Quickben possessed, and they were all so clean, as if in defiance of the foolish one in chains. Quickben told him to be quiet as he stood on the shore of the river. He tried to minimize the distance of the path for the troops and others that needed to cross the river. Tired as he was, Talamandus whining in his ear only made it worse. Tally claimed that too much power had been released here, enough to draw notice. The crippled god could not help but find them. It was suicidal. Quickben told his invisible rider to be quiet. Krupp thought he was talking to him and said one rude comment was enough. Quickman said he was just thinking out loud. Krupp said that was an odd habit for a mage. Could be dangerous. Quickman asked if he really thought so. This was all on purpose. The power he was showing was supposed to be a kick to the hornet's nest. Both of them. He asked Krupp if he knew why he would do such a thing. Krupp didn't know why, but perhaps in his explaining of tactics was a way to distract them from the seagulls. Quickben said he would reconsider. He didn't know he was being so obvious. Krupp said it was nonsense. Some might call him a megalomaniac, but that's what people call him, so Quickben was in singular company. Quickben called him out and asked about the seagulls. Krupp said they were not an issue unless one of them was to land on his left shoulder, which would present a different problem. Quickben had no answer for this. Quickben said they were on the other side. The Marines said they were crossing the same way, and Quickben said he thought about dropping them halfway. How long it had been since they had had a bath. The Marine said it had been a while. They had been busy. The other Marine said they didn't want to get wet. Their clothes under their armor might fall apart. Krupp said that would be a sight he would never forget. One of the Marines said his eyes would fall out. If they didn't, well, they'd help make that happen. The other said at least their nails would be clean. Krupp said he only meant to compliment. Krupp said that wasn't necessary, as over the years and decades, Krupp, he's got layers of fragrance that are now stuck to him, so he doesn't smell bad, at least according to him. Krupp battered back and forth with the Marines, and Quickben was relieved when he saw Whiskey Jack approaching.
I love Krupp. Had very mixed feelings about him in Gardens of the Moon, but like he's such a player. Even though he's like physically repulsive from what I've gathered, even like the Marines bantering with him at the end here, him smelling bad, and then I think that's what you may have deleted or forgot to put in was the Marines were saying like, hey, we don't need a bath because like you smell just as shitty as we do, and that's where he's like blah blah blah. He does his Krupp thing, right? I thought I definitely think it was a nice reprieve to some of the other things that we have read that up to this point were very heavy.
Yeah, Krupp is a great character. I really like Krupp. I always love the scenes that he's in. He's a great character to follow.
Francesca, if you want to go with your first thought here, and then we'll just continue down again.
Yeah, I don't have too many thoughts on this section. It's good fun, especially with Krupp and Quickben being in the same room together. I just think that they're a funny dynamic, and so when you put two mad geniuses in a room, it's sure to explode. And so it kind of is like through like their word sparring and everything, and it's just kind of funny that their mad genius feeds off of each other a little bit, and so it's just a fun section in my opinion.
Both arrogant about different things, so while they have some like similarities, they're both like Krupp kind of views him a little bit. I get the sense that Krupp views himself a little bit better than Quickben, and I think Quickben is kind of doing the same thing a little bit. So they both definitely think that they're the smartest man in the room. Yes.
I find it interesting that so now Krupp, I think he's alluding to, he knows that something is with Quickben, with Talamandus, and even like Paran, thought he saw something out of the corner of his eye and that type of thing. So I'm curious to see more about that and like what that's about. I don't really know what to think about it right now.
Well, I mean, Quickben is clearly hiding it for reasons that I don't think that we've have really in-depthly been explained about. I'm assuming that, if I was Quickben, I would want to make sure that it's 100% foolproof before I share the information. And I think Krupp here with the whole seagull stuff is insinuating that there is an onlooker that is not part of the conversation. So Krupp is comparing the seagulls to Talamandus. They're squawking, they're observing, but they're not really contributing anything. They're just kind of this annoyance. And that's why he kind of brings back to oh, well, you stopper it with a cork. I thought we were talking about corks, And so he kind of just snidely remarks that if Quick Ben wants Telemandus to shut up, should put a cork in it, right? Like, yeah, it's just funny. I don't know. It's weird humor.
It's all good, man. Quick Ben's talking about, kicking the hornet's nest, both of them, and I can only assume that it means the Panion and the crippled god.
I believe so as well. Up until this point, we know that Quick Ben is helping these barges get across the river with his powers, so to speak, right? So I think it's serving a dual purpose in Quick Ben's mind. But I think that he's a little paranoid about it.
Yeah, could be for sure.
Yeah, no, I didn't have much thoughts on this section as well. So
yeah, I don't have anything. Francesca, if you got anything, otherwise we can keep going.
All right, here we come to the meat of the section of this episode. Section 4 here. Dusk fell upon Capustan in the alleyways. An occasional group of Gidrath soldiers walked around doing rounds. Call was wrapped in a cloak, covering his full armor. He watched as the light from the Gidrath soldier's torch grew fainter. As darkness reclaimed the alleyway, Call stepped out from a clove and gestured towards Murillo. Murillo flicked the oxen into motion as Call went ahead to check out the street. It seemed that the only surviving priests were the ones at the thrall. Call didn't want to go there, though, as now there weren't any powerful allies to level. Well, not powerful allies. There weren't any powerful allies and a noble or a prince to level the priest's excuses. Call thought to himself that the future of Capustan would be dire, with the mass council in charge. Call waved to Murillo to bring the wagon onto the street. They continued up the street, and due to the nature of their wagon being built for plains travel, it was a bit of a rocky one. Call heard a grunt and a whipping of the traces when he turned around just in time to see Murillo flung from the seat and hit the ground hard. He saw a huge figure all in black standing on top of the wagon. Fear ripped through Call as he said, "What the fuck?" The figure gestured towards him, and black sorcery bloomed towards him. Cursing, Call leapt to the side and landed on the first step of a temple. His attempt at dodging the sorcery was not enough, and he put up his arm to block the sorcery. The sorcery vanished suddenly. He dropped his arm in time to see a dark, armored figure step over him. The attacker on the wagon stated that the figure approaching him should be dead. He can sense Hood coiled on his lifeless chest. Hood has kept him here, wandering. The figure said that he wasn't wandering, he was hunting. The winged figure, Corbel, I presume, questions if it was them he was hunting. He goes in to explain that Boschelin and Corbel, have taken little from Hood, and after the siege of Capustan, shouldn't Hood be lethargic? Corbel sought out the unconscious hag, as she teetered on the edge of the abyss. The Knight of Death says that the hag was not for him, and that her spirit awaits, and those of her gathered kin. They all await, but not for Corbel. Corbel says, "Alrighty then," and then asks about Call and Murillo, and how he could use so many pieces of them. The Knight of Death defiantly told him no, and told him that his master has requested they release all the undead that guard their compound, and that you and the one named Boschelin must leave the city tonight. Corbel responds that they had planned on leaving in the morning to follow those armies to the south. The Knight of Death said that it must be tonight or he will claim their souls, and explains how Hood has much in mind for the pair of them. Corbel spread his wings and then flew away, but not before he said that the Knight of Death would have to catch them first. The Knight of Death walked towards where Murillo lay, and Call stood up and thanked the figure for saving their lives, and asked if his friend lived. The warrior Call saw was wearing the remnants of Gidrath armor, spoke and said that Murillo was alive. Call asked if what the warrior had meant by hunting was indeed not the necromancers. The Knight of Death said that those two were an arrogant pair. Call nodded and asked what they were going to do with what he was going to do with them, as they were caring for an elderly woman. The warrior replied that they were to have Hood's protection and to follow him to Hood's temple, where preparations were being made for their arrival. Call has some hesitations and explains that he wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, as the Mhybe needs help. The figure replied that what the Mhybe needs is not something Call can give her. Call asked if the help the Mhybe needed was for Hood to give. The Knight of Death cocked his head and asked Call if he slept. Call questioningly told him yes. The Knight of Death explains that he used to, but doesn't anymore, and instead he paces. Thus, for one that does not sleep, and one in that wagon who will not awaken, he believes that they will have a need for each other. Call asked what kind of need, to which the Knight of Death said he didn't know. Call put his sword away. He was unsure as to why he did, though, as he felt his questions were not answered. The thought of Hood's protection gave him chills. He eventually nodded and explained that he'd like to pick up his friend and put him in the wagon. The knight said that this was true and apologized that he would have, but the words Corporal Broach had spoken to him had gotten inside his head. He asked Call if he appeared dead. Call tells him that he cannot be sure, but he thinks that he might be. Call asked him if he had a name. The man replied and said that he thinks he did, but he cannot remember it now. Crouching down to gather up Murillo, Call told the man that Knight of Death wouldn't do. He asked if the man was a Gidrath or a Capan citizen, but with that bronze coloring to his skin, he was interrupted as the Knight of Death explains that he is neither Capan nor Gidrath, but from a different continent. He knows not how he got, or hasn't been there long. This is because of the will of his master. Explains that he does remember one thing from his past, and that was that he stood in fire, in pain, sworn to defend a child's life, but that child is no more, and it may be that he failed. Call said that this was a painful memory, but the man still needed a name. The knight said that perhaps one would come to the Daru eventually, or there's a chance that one day his memories will return in full, and with it, his name. Call thought to himself that he hoped that day would never come, as it would be a mercy to the man. He thinks that there was nothing easy about his life, and he's been taken far away from all he's known. If he's not mistaken, judging by his features, the Knight of Death is Malazan.
I think the Knight of Death, without a doubt, is Bowden.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. This is, to me, this section is very in your face. Erickson is kind of like, I am giving you all the tools and clues that you need without actually saying this guy's name.
Right.
But that's just like I remember reading this and just losing my damn mind.
Well, I mean, you don't see it coming, and while I am leaning towards Bowden, there are some things that like I had picked up that kind of contradict that, and it just is not doubting that I feel it isn't Bowden. It just is. I have questions about how it's Bowden, if that makes sense. Before we get there, what I would like to point out is just Call's thoughts about the mass council being in charge now that there isn't like a noble prince around, and now that there isn't any powerful allies. It's scary to think about the mass council and how they will, I guess, go about transforming Capustan. And I can't imagine it will be good.
I mean, it's can't be worse than getting destroyed by the Ten of Scoury.
I mean, can it though? I think the mass council is only serving their own interests, and the fact that they bicker so damn much is going to make progress kind of halt. It'll be at a standstill.
Maybe. I mean, I guess I wouldn't have been upset if they would have gotten eaten by the Ten of Scoury, but I don't know. Certainly anything is better than that. So even if you've got some shitty people running the show, I mean, there's at least the option
to rebuild
for change
somehow.
at some point. Yeah.
Right. But I think that their endless bickering and excuses, as Call says, is going to thwart them from achieving it in a quicker pace.
I can agree with that. Yeah, it's probably not going to be great, but it could certainly be worse in my eyes.
Fair. Okay, so my first hole, right, is that the figure, according to Corporal Broach, stated that the figure approaching him should be dead. He can sense Hood coiled on his lifeless chest. Hood has kept him here wandering. And just, again, thinking about it, and I realize that this is partially wrong, being that I reread the chapter last night. But when I was summarizing, it seems like Corporal knows this man. And it's possible it's Bowden, but at that time I was thinking probably not. But I can see that instead of him knowing Bowden, he's sensing that he's dead. And I think that there's a distinction there. So like, no, that doesn't blow a hole in your theory as I wrote, but I'm just at that time when I was summarizing and we had talked about Bowden, this really stood out to me because I kind of got the sense that Corporal knew him personally. So that's kind of what made me feel that your theory wasn't true. But I see that Corporal was just stating what he sensed in the fact that the man was dead and not because he knew him, if that makes sense.
Justin, I was so sure about this. I was willing to put a pie on the line for this. That's how sure I was, because all the evidence is right there. It's all here.
I know, it is all right there, but I want to know how. I want to know how. Like that is the fault in my stars, is I want to know the fuck why or how. I guess we can come back to that other one. But the Gidrath armor, right? So what stands out to me, and this is probably one of the holes, is so you remember when Itkovian was with Carnatus and Carnatus was healing Itkovian but actively dying because of it. And there were 2 Gidrath soldiers from the East Watch Redoubt that had been saved and were kind of like in this infirmary type setting. And I could have swore that one of them was pacing and seemed to be mad from like the lack of sleep. So that tells me that if this was Bowden, then Hood put him in the East Watch Redoubt. And I don't know. I just, for whatever reason, I feel like one of the Gidrath soldiers was dead while the other one was pacing, and Tuitkovian seemed to be mad and assumed that it was because like from a lack of sleep or something. But like at that time, you just kind of overlook it because like they're just 2 insignificant people that Itkovian is observing, you know? And while that point of view wasn't about the Gidrath, it was about Itkovian kind of being healed. It was like right after, it was the chapter right after, or it may have been the chapter when he was fighting the Tenascauri the first time.
I don't know. I feel like that is just tossed out the window when he says, I'm from another continent. To me, that tells you, I mean, he came from 7 cities or wherever the hell, wherever it was. He was protecting the little girl in the fire was Felsen.
Oh, for sure.
And he self-immolated himself, when he went to, fight off the rats.
I don't know. Why would you put that in there then?
Australia, you fell for it.
Fuck.
I don't know, because I didn't think about that at all.
But also, like, the bronze coloring to the skin. Okay, so like I remember this from Deadhouse Gates with Stormy, Gessler, and Truth. And I guess it's possible that, Hood is like, oh, hey, you did something that deserves you to be near ascendancy. So like that's not a point at all. Like it's definitely possible that Bowden could have bronze skin, but god damn it.
I think deserve is kind of not really the word for it, because honestly, with a lot of the characters in Malazan, death would be a mercy, and death would kind of be like this kind of like, oh, they get to rest kind of thing. But then, they're denied that and they just continue to live on. So like with this type of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that in Deadhouse Gates, does not Heboric see Hood come for Bottom? I think.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I think it's in Deadhouse Gates come for him when he died.
We saw Hood come for Carnatus, was it
Bowden?
The other one.
Brucalion, I think.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Brucalion. Oh, that's another. Whew, that was great. Anyways, like you said with Stormy and Gessler, like they went through like the fire, and so they got that bronze skin, and that's kind of what happened with Botted, is that he went through the fire and he got that bronze skin at the same time as well. And so I think that it's not necessarily that Hood was like, oh, you did something of like worthiness, and so you deserve this. It's kind of, I think he just needed somebody. And I don't think it's like as like we don't necessarily know why or anything, but it for me, when I remember reading this, I was I remember being like, well, this isn't necessarily like a job promotion for him. Like he's not having like a great time doing it. But yeah, it feels pretty like solid for me that would be Balden, yeah.
See, I thought the gold thing was because they went through the Solanda stuff together. I thought
No,
that
and
was
they
the
went
reason
through-
why Stormy, Gessler, and Truth were bronze hued. Because
they were bronze hued because they went through the fire. The Warren had like fire in it, or like I said, it has been a long time since I've actually like read the entire book. But from what I remember, the dragon like dragged them through the fire warren, and that's how they had gotten bronzed on there.
then how come Haboric, Felozin, Culp, and Bowden were not mentioned as having a bronze hue? Because they went through that too.
Because Bowden protected Felison from it. Like that was the reason why she was able to live through that, is because Bowden is the one who like didn't he like
He like jumped on her.
he like jumped on her and covered her up and protected her, and that's the reason why he died. And he thought that because of the fact that he was able to go through the Warren of Fire, he thought he was fire resistant. He thought that he would be able to live through that, and he didn't. It didn't make him fire resistant. So he ended up getting like really, really badly burned, and that's the reason why he died from it. But he had thought, because he had gone through that Warren of Fire, that he would have some kind of like fire resistance to it, and he was protecting Felison at the same time while he was doing that. And that's why they didn't die.
He like grabbed her, and then they jumped off the ship, I think.
Yeah,
And then the others must have followed.
Yeah.
but it's been like I said, it's been over a year since I've read both of those books, so I could have some of the details wrong, but essentially I think that's kind of what happened.
And I
It's
mean,
been over a year for us too, so.
right? Yeah. And these are some of the things that like I want, like when I do my reread, like these will be in the back of my mind, permanently. Like there's not a day where like I don't think about these books. Granted, Gardens of the Moon is fewer and far between than like Dead House Gates and these two. It goes back to, if he's not Gidrath, why is he wearing Gidrath clothes?
Maybe that's just what was available. Maybe, I don't know, was there another Night of Death before him that he like kicked out of place and just took his shit? I don't know.
I mean, to me, the only obvious solution is that Hood just transpired Bowden's soul into one of the Gidrath soldiers that was near death. That to me seems to be the only logical solution, but it leaves me with a sense of wondering how or why. None of that is explained here. I'm sure that more will be unveiled in due time, but just as this section goes, that's what I'm hung up on. I definitely think that it's Bowden, but there are these holes here that make me think otherwise.
Fill him in, man. Fill him in.
That's what I'm looking for you two to do.
I think that those smaller details aren't of too much consequence. Like, how did he get those clothes? Okay, like we have warrens that open into entire worlds. We have mages who are able to access all of these warrens. We have talking toads. So wondering why a certain character is wearing different clothes, and having that be the reason why that might not be the reason why this character is not who this character is. It feels like a very small detail in lieu of the plethora of other clues that we have been getting that this is Balden. So not to say that like your opinion is invalid or anything, like that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just like, it's just kind of like whenever people ask me, like Malazan, like, is it like, should I do it? Is it super complicated? It's just like, go with the flow. Go with the flow. Don't get hung up on all of the super tiny itty bitty details, because everything will come into place eventually. Like it all takes time and patience, but like,
Oh, sure.
but yeah, like it seems like a smaller detail having his clothes be different than I mean, I'm sure maybe Hood has an entire warren that's just a wardrobe, and he just like changed there. He's just like, hey, guess what? You've been hired.
You changed real quick.
You've been hired. Here is your uniform. So it's just like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that important of a detail
No, I mean, you're 100% right. It's just me, and being a detailed oriented person,
Yeah,
I am unable to. It's hard for me to like step back and see the big picture, while the big picture is obviously there, and I don't even care if my opinion is irrelevant or not. Like, this is just like a conversation thing for me. Like, it's something that I'm hung up on. I know that I shouldn't be hung up on it, but it's just still there. It's just right in my face, right? You know?
it's okay. We all have those. There's a there's an entire very minor plot detail in Return of the Crimson Guard that I was hung up on. It had no bearing on the story, none whatsoever. I couldn't let it go. It followed me throughout the entire book. I just could not let it go. So like I get it. Like there are just some things that you just like you just can't stop thinking about or can't like let go of.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. I guess, Derek, I'm curious, like, how you immediately went to Bowden. Was it simply just because of these details, or did you just like it just made sense to you?
The details made sense. He said, I haven't been here long, and we know these two books are kind of concurrent. He didn't know where he came from. And then he says, I remember a fire, and I was supposed to protect a girl. And so I'm just like, it's got to be Bowden.
It's Bowden. Well, and I remember we had a conversation during the Dead House Gates episodes where we even debated whether Bowden was dead. And I feel like why this is so hard is because I feel like I remember that conversation, and both of us were like, yeah, I don't think he's coming back. So I think that in my head, it's just that conversation coming back to say you're wrong, when in actuality, like as you said, Francesca, the focusing on this very specific and insignificant detail is causing you to be subverted. And yeah, no, okay, all right. I mean, like I said, I was like 89% there. I just had some questions.
Well, I'm glad you came around, but like I said, I was kind of hoping to just pound it out here. And like I said, I would have put a pie on the line for this, but
You were gonna
no need now. Yeah.
Huh. We were gonna Silver Fox and Piran it, huh?
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that was all of the thoughts that I had. I know, Francesca, you have some additional thoughts here, so feel free to take them away.
Yeah, no, it's just such a emotional moment for me when I was reading it. Like when he says that it may be that he failed with, and like kind of mirroring your thoughts, where like how I knew was, he stood in fire, sworn to defend a child's life, but the child is no more. It may be that he failed, and he failed miserably. It's just really sad and heartfelt, which is, Malazan staple. And I just remember reading this and feeling the weight of what I was reading. And I also really found it interesting that he was saying that he like couldn't remember his name, couldn't remember like who he was or anything. And it kind of made me wonder if that was intentional on Hood's part, where Hood might have taken away his memories, and just to kind of spare him the weight of what had happened when he was alive. So it just like, I don't know, it's not something that necessarily needs an answer or something that I was looking for as I was reading. It was just an interesting thought that I had.
Sure. I would agree. I think that I would want to be ignorant of what had happened previously.
But he's not, though. I mean, he remembers some of it.
Right.
He just doesn't remember his name. I guess I would rather remember my name than maybe what happened, But
Maybe. But then, like, people are going to recognize, right? Like, someone's got to know
That's
it.
true. Like, oh, Bowden, you're the guy that got burnt alive?
Right, exactly. Exactly. I mean...
Well, thanks, I forgot that.
People are dicks, right? Like, so... Yeah, I don't know. It's a very good question. And while I understood and comprehended the meaning of what Call is kind of thinking here at the end, again, it just kind of plays into my theory a little bit about the amount of ominous undertones we are left with at each section. Not everyone, but most of them, right? Like, we're usually left off with some type of thought-provoking statement. It doesn't help with that sense of dread that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Okay.
anything else we want to talk about there?
Not at all. I'm
Okay.
curious as to see how this plays out. I know that we're kind of getting congruently aligned with near the end of Deadhouse Gates, right? So I can only assume that based on this section that Bowden had just died in Gryland's fire, right? Or trying to kill Gryland, so.
All right, section 5. Itkovian crossed on the last barge under the stars with Stony Manakis and Gruntle, and 100 or so Rivi and their dogs. The dogs were not happy until the edge of the barge, looking out over the water. Then they were the first off once they made it to the far side. No one contested their arrival. It appeared to be empty and desolate. Only the tracks of Septarch Kolpath's army remained. Gruntle said he figures it'll be this way all the way to Coral. Ikovian said it seems likely. That's what he would have done if he were the seer. Gruntle continued, wondering if Brood and Dujek realized the army that laid siege to Capustan was one of at least 3 of comparable size, and that Kolpath was fairly effective, though there were at least 6 others that could cause them trouble as well. Itkovian said they need to assume the enemy is preparing for them, even as their time dwindles. Gruntle asked if he knew something the rest of them didn't. Itkovian only said he had drawn conclusions based on what he saw of Kolpath and the Tenniscoury. Gruntle told him to spill the beans. Itkovian likened the Panian Doman to a flower. The government is the head, while the common folk are the stalk with roots in the ground. The Panians' common folk are the Tenniscoury. All food production is stopped, and has been for some time. Lest, Seta, Morik, and Coral. Of these cities, Itkovian believes only Coral has people there. It would be the only city capable of feeding its defending army. The seer has to consolidate his forces, and the soldiers will have to become cannibals. Itkovian believed that the Tenniscoury were always meant to be an eventual food source for the soldiers. Gruntle said that would be unsustainable. Itkovian said that was true, unless they continued to expand. Gruntle said the others would be in for a surprise when they do all this marching to the other cities and there are no battles to be fought, and that hopefully the siege at Coral would not be a long one. Itkovian thought it would be short, a single attack between soldiers and sorcery. Stony broke in, saying they needed to get moving. The barge was settling, and if she got mud on her new clothes, there would be hell to pay. She just had these delivered by the Trigali Trade Guild from her favorite tailor in Darujistan. She explained how the clothes were the color of a snake and the lining made to look like a white Peralt spider, and to move their horses or she would give them her boot.
Before we move on to the section, there was one thing that I forgot to talk about in the previous section.
Oh boy, Justin.
And that was the whole hunting thing of the Night of Death. Call at first assumes that the Night of Death is hunting Corbel and Bauchelane Brooch. Or Corbel, Brooch, and Bauchelane. He kind of finds out that he was hunting really for the Mhybe. And so that's kind of where, going back to that first section, I said, keep an eye out for that hunted thing, because I think that for whatever reason, this is potentially why Silver Fox at least is a little concerned about her mom, is because she knows that she's being hunted by the Night of Death. I'm a little unclear on that, but I'm just curious, what is going on with the Mhybe? Because, there seems to be so many different tales surrounding her, and I'm not sure, which one I should be focusing on or following, and I'll just focus on all of them, really, but the multitasking I am doing in my mind to keep track of this is driving me crazy. Does Silver Fox have some deal with Hood? We kind of know that Telemandus is in bed with Hood, and we then know the Night of Death is Hood, or part of Hood, which we don't know who it is yet. Well, we talked about that. It's Bowden. Corbel was kind of right about what he said, that he could feel the house of death stirring again. That makes it seem that, Hood is becoming active, which makes sense. We see a lot of him throughout this book. I just wonder how all this like fits together. How does like Hood, Silver Fox, the Mhybe, and even to an extent like Tok and Tog and Fanderay, like how, the Talan Eye, the Talani Mask, like it just seems like there's so many things surrounding a central theme that hasn't been revealed yet.
I don't think I've got anything to add on to what you said.
I mean, again, I know all in due time, but I just can't help but point it out. Okay, so we can move on to your section.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot here, but it was interesting that, Itkovian compares the Pannian Doman to a flower. When a flower is generally something pretty to look at, and imagine the Pannian Doman is not something pretty to look at, but kind of that revelation that the Teniscalri were the ones that are eventually supposed to become the food source. Like, yikes, like, oh boy. Yeah, that's not great.
No, not great at all. The pure horror of that, it was just like pretty chilling. I out of all of the Malazan books, the Pannian Doman has stuck with me the most. Like that was pretty horrifying for me to read. Just the whole thing. I mean, not just the specific part where they say that the Teniscalri are supposed to be the food source for the soldiers. Feel just really horrific, really awful, and it just like it really. Like, I remember when I was reading The Siege of Capustan, and I just imagined just this, like, tidal wave of just these really awful, skeletal, like, emaciated people just, like, coming upon this city. And it's just really horrific in my mind. So, like, to read this, that they were supposed to be the food source for the soldiers, just adds on to the horror and just adds on to the whole feeling. And, yeah, it's just oof. This leaves me feeling
And Derek, this also
a little bit ick.
Right. This also answers your question as to why Culpath never sent in the Teniscalri first. Like, how fucked up is that?
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Like, that is the reason why the Teniscalri came in afterwards.
I suppose so.
The soldiers were meant to go in first because if they were to survive, the Teniscalri would be their food.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, eventually, I suppose, after, you run out of everything else. Pretty dark. Dark for sure. And it was not it was not a twist, or it was not a revelation I was expecting to read.
So, what is interesting about this is last night when I was reading, I think it's in one of the sections to come. Yeah, I think it was in one of the sections to come. I don't even remember. But they were like, Kobian was talking about splitting up. So maybe that was in an earlier section. And I was going back to the front of the book and I was like looking at the map, trying to like, get a visualization as to where they are in reference to what they're talking about. And I happened to read the acknowledgments at the beginning of this book. And Erickson at the very last sentence says, "And thanks to John Meany for the disgusting details on dead seeds." And I kind of want to know more about that conversation. So I think that's something we should put in our like little question to ask Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, weird tangent. Continue.
I mean, that was kind of my only thought for it here. Francesca, I know you got at least one here.
Yeah, I found it interesting that like Ikovian thought it would be a single attack between soldiers and sorcery, and we know that whenever sorcery and soldiers come together, it is yes, short and sweet, but it is devastating. The sorcery is just, that's one of the interesting things that I found about Malazan is that there is such incredible power happening. And so you would kind of expect these really long, drawn out, battle sequences of like with the sorcery. But usually when it's like a one-on-one sorcery, like between mage and mage, it's usually like a paragraph and then it's over because it's just so powerful, so devastating. When you combine that with a battle, it just creates again that sense of dread and feeling that we've been talking about through this entire section, is that yes, it's short and sweet, but at what cost? Like, who is at the end, who's really winning here? Because when battles sorcery and soldiers come together, it's pretty devastating from what we have witnessed and seen throughout the series.
Yeah, it's been pretty terrible, those instances. I would agree.
I would as well. I'm, again, adding to like the ominous undertone of this chapter.
I also assume it's going to be quick engagement just because of where we're at in the book. I mean, there's not really enough pages for something super long and drawn out, I don't think. So it's going to be, I mean, it's got to be fast and furious and just nasty. It's, I don't know. It's still like hard to like wrap my head around, like, you know, like, yeah, we got 200-ish pages left in the book. Like, how the hell is this supposed to wrap up? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know how how could it end? I don't know.
Hard to say, but I don't have any. I mean, it was a short section. I don't know if I really have too many other thoughts about it, but I think the one
I don't have any
made was great.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move on.
All right. Picker and Blend were sitting by a fire and watched as Dotoran dragged Hedge towards her tent. He seemed to be playfully struggling against his captor, but was soon restrained. Blend commented how it was nice that the night hid certain things, referring to Dotoran and Hedge's bedroom ball. They joke about Hedge and Dotoran's escapades a bit more. Picker manages to change the subject from Hedge being dragged into the tent each night to how they've been all busted about, the bridge burners, that is, all the way up to the top to Whiskey Jack. Picker states that Mallet had led a cadre of mages and Spindle had his own company of sappers at once. Blend comments until Dasim broke them up because of an accident where one of them tripped on a cusser and died. Blend asked about what. Picker explains that they weren't what they used to be. Blend states that she's never been promoted. Picker said sarcastically that this was a surprise and Blend is never noticed. Blend retorts that even so, Ansi was a sergeant and he's never been busted down. Picker, in her doom and gloom, responds by saying that it was because he was so bad, it keeps the rest of them punished enough. Blend says that this was a welcome thought, and Picker said that not all thoughts have to be nice. Horses' hooves were heard, and Captain Paran made his way into view, leading his horse by his reins. They offer him tea, and Paran commented that this was the first fire by the bridge burners, the first fire left seen by the bridge burners, and asked if Picker and Blend ever slept. The three of them converse more about the art of sleep until Paran tells them that there has been word from the Black Maranth. They had observed Seta and there was no one there. Picker asked if they were still to march there then. Paran confirms that they still were marching there because they weren't going to march to Lest. Paran sipped his tea and told them that he's selected his second. Picker asked why. Paran said for obvious reasons, and that he's picked her, Picker, and Whiskey Jack has given his blessing on it as well. And in Paran's absence, Picker is in charge of the bridge burners. Picker politely declines. Paran says that she has no choice, as it's already had Dujek's seal on it. Blend nudges Picker and tells her congratulations. Paran sat up and told Picker that he only had one order for her, and that was at all costs keep the bridge burners together. They watched as Paran led his horse away. Blend told Picker that they should go to bed. They stamped the fire out, and in the darkness of the night, Blend hooked her arm through Picker's and said that it was all down to what the night hides. Picker thought to herself that this was true. However, instead of sexual exploration with Blend, she relates that to what Paran had meant, and something told her that was the end of her sleeping peacefully. Moments later, no movement was visible, and only the stars remained looking down at the bridge burner camp. Again, some more like really subtle humor, and Dotoran being a sergeant once, and how Hedge would have to stand at attention was just a really funny, subtle wiener joke. And right? Okay.
I didn't think of it.
I mean, how these two can take something so provocative and then turn it around to how everybody's been demoted. They're talking about Dotoran being a sergeant once, and they assume that is the reason why Hedge just is doing what he's told, standing at attention, quote unquote, right? But at the same time brings it back to a more serious undertone. It seems that the bridge burners are just left to do what they're supposed to do. You know, they're all at some point in time being demoted, or there's some type of other natural consequence. And I don't know. I think maybe this is just me being a little like facetious, but I know that like we've got some comments about not being professional. And it's one of those things where like there's plenty of like subtle nuance about like sexual things and innuendos, and like while we are more blatant about it sometimes, I think that people forget that this stuff exists too, but they're just not catching it.
Nicely said.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
I love sappers. I think they're the best part of Malazan history. Military. I just think they're hilarious, and I love this comment that Spindle once had his own company of sappers, and they blew themselves up, so they had to disband. And I find that so funny. I mean, it shouldn't be because people died, but it's hilarious to me that they actually gave sappers like their own company, and that's just bonkers to me. Like how else would that end other than, you know, death by explosion? So it's just a very funny part in the section for me.
Yeah, I mean, you take the concept of like pyromaniacs, right? And you put them all in a group. Of course, they're gonna do some really dumb shit, right? Like you can't give sappers that kind of responsibility. It's just not gonna work. It's just funny. Yeah, it's just funny how like Erickson can do this thing where like you have these like really funny moments, and then all of a sudden it just switches to like a serious thing. You know, and during this section, I feel kind of bad for Picker because she's getting the sense of something happening, like an aura of ill fortune around like the bridge burners, and can only help with so much bad luck. Like you can't help to think it's more than just bad luck itself, and that there's like more to it. You know, like something bad happens to you and people around you over and over again. You can't help just think that it's consequence, or coincidence. Really, there's something more at play, but she doesn't really have a way of like naming it, and so it just makes me feel real bad for her.
Yeah.
But again, another thing is when, you know, after Paran promotes her, he tells her that like he only has one order, and that was at all costs keep the bridge burners together. And again, it plays to this like really nasty, you know, like butterflies in your gut feeling throughout this entire chapter.
I remember I was reading most of this on Kindle, so that way I could highlight stuff, and I would screenshot things and send them into like our group chat for the buddy read. And I remember screenshotting this sentence and saying, "Take it back."
Wow.
Because I didn't like it, because I just didn't like that part at all. And like I'm like agreeing with what you're saying, that it sounds like pretty like, ugh, I don't like the way that sounds.
I feel like Paran, I don't know, like must be gonna leave. It's the only thing that makes any sense. He's gonna leave, and that's why he's saying Picker's gonna be the second, and giving her that directive that like despite whatever happens, you keep them together. So I don't know, like you said, ominous, Justin. So I don't know what he's up to. Maybe he's gonna go with Quick Ben back to the underground tree things. I think that's where that's headed with Quick Ben. But
yeah, I mean, this next section kind of reveals a little bit more. I mean, not to the point of like extreme details, but Dujek and Whiskey Jack definitely have some things planned, but we'll get to that next. The last thought I had for this humorous / very serious section was like, I kind of had a feeling that Blend and Picker may be like romantically involved. I mean, at least to the point of like friends with benefits, but like at the end of the day, like I don't really think that it's hinted at until now, where Blend kind of like hooks her arm around Pickers and then like is telling them that they need to go to bed, and then kind of brings it back to the beginning of the chapter when Blend makes a comment about that it was all down to what the night hides. So it kind of like gives this insinuation that they are romantically involved with each other, at least physically. So I don't know if I ever like picked up on that before, because they seem to be so like argumentative with each other, but sometimes that's just couples too. So
Yeah, maybe it's just kind of how they flirt with each other or something.
Right.
Banter back and forth, just, like soldiers probably do with their buddies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you could, not like me spoiling anything or anything, but you could take it either way. Like at this point in the book, you could take it either way, where they're just being like they could be romantically involved, but they could also just be like best buds, because I don't think it's super clear at this point in the books. But
Right.
But I think that, yeah, you could definitely take it either way at this point.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I had for that short section. I'm ready to move on if you are.
Yeah. Dujek was ready for Whiskey Jack when he entered his command tent. Whiskey Jack said they had lost her. Bran had given the order so the bridge burners would be ready. They won't know what they'll be ready for, and that's probably best. Dujek told Whiskey Jack to wipe the crumbs out of his beard so that he could take him seriously. Whiskey Jack said in regards to Bran, his loss of Silver Fox, he's become extremely valuable to the entire Empire. Quickben is adamant that Paran is the master of the deck, with the powers to reshape the world. Perhaps Lysine has no chance, of ever regaining Paran's favor, but this should at least keep her from making it worse. Dujek said he would let her know the next time he saw her. Dujek said the loss of Quickben was the biggest blow. Whiskey Jack said that he, or Quickben, had planned it was best that Brood and the rest knew as little as possible. So long as the division of forces goes as planned, they'd have no reason to suspect that Quickben wasn't with them. Dujek said Quickben was insane. Whiskey Jack said that his madness had saved them more than once. Dujek was aware of that and said it was just supposed to be Rake and the Teist Andi, Brood, and the other elder gods that were supposed to be getting in the way of the crippled god. Not them. One mortal squad with a highborn captain who's already died once, and a squad mage. To bicker, and Dujek told Whiskey Jack that Lysine had inverted the command structure on purpose. Whiskey Jack said so that the right people would be at the ground level when Shadowthrone and Cotillion made their move. Dujek said it wasn't just them. Whiskey Jack said this info should be shared with Quickben and all the bridge burners. Dujek said no. Did he think Quickben hadn't already figured this out? Whiskey Jack wanted to know why then did Quickben send Kalam after the Empress. Dujek told him that Quickben knew Kalam needed to see it for himself in person, face to face with the Empress. Whiskey Jack said he must be the only dumbass in this whole game. Dujek said the only honorable one, at least. They knew the crippled god was going to make a move, and the other gods were going to make a mess of things, though they didn't anticipate any of the elder gods getting involved. They knew trouble was coming from multiple directions, though there was no way they could have predicted what was going on within the Panian Domain was related to the crippled god. Even still, he didn't think it was a coincidence that a couple bridge burners bumped into the agent of the Chained One, that sickly artisan from Darujistan, or that Quickben was there to confirm the arrival of the House of Chains. Lysine always understood the tactical placement of troops yielding results, and Hood knew she taught that to the Emperor, not the other way around. The crippled god's pocket warren wandered. The fact that it had wandered to the hills between Darujistan and Pale was an opportunity too good to pass up. If he was going to do anything, he had to act. And they caught him. Maybe not how they thought, but they did it. Dujek continued saying, for Paran, there was logic there after all. Tayshren was grooming Tattersail to become the mistress of the deck, and when that backfired, there were repercussions. Fired straight at the guy closest to her at the time. Not physically, but spiritually. And if they look back, the only true dimwit was Bellarden Skullcrusher. They'll never know what happened between him and Tattersail on the plain, but it was one of the biggest fuck-ups in the Empire's history. That the master of the deck fell to a Malazan and not some Gadrobi herder nearby was by Open's own luck. Whiskey Jack said now he was worried. They had been too clever, and he wondered who was manipulating who. They're playing shadow games with the Lord of Shadows, rattling the chains of the crippled god, and now buying Brood more time without him even knowing it, while simultaneously defying the Talan Imus, or at least intending to. Dujek told Whiskey Jack that hesitation was fatal. If you're in the middle of a wide and raging river, you only had one direction to swim. It was up to them to keep Lysine's head above the water, and through her, the Empire. If Brood swings his hammer in Byrne's name, they were all done for. Civilization would be gone. Whiskey Jack said to do that, they need to throw themselves in the crippled god's way. One damn tired army already decimated by Lysine and her panic. Dujek said he needed to forgive her. She was mortal after all, and while they didn't know it at the time, Pale was an accident. Taishren ordered them to stay in the tunnels because he thought it was the safest place. Whiskey Jack said it felt like they were supposed to be one big fatality. Then he thought to himself, no, it was just supposed to be him. Dujek continued saying Darujstan was a mess. Miscommunication. The battle didn't go as planned, and Taishren really thought he could take down Moonspawn and put Rig into the open. And if he had some help in the fight, it might have been different. That, and apparently he really didn't even know who Nightchill was. But he knew she was closing in on Rake's sword. She was using Belladin to do her research. It looked like a power grab, and Lysine wasn't going to let that happen. Even then, Taishren only hit her when she took out Acherones, the same High Mage who came to Taishren with suspicions about her. This was a close second for the biggest fuck-up in the Empire's history. With all the plans that had gone to shit in recent history, including the Talan Imus at Aaron, Whiskey Jack thought they were headed for another disaster. Dujek hoped he was wrong, but he had another observation, and it wasn't great. He's beginning to think the Empire isn't half as sure as to what they are doing as they think they are. They got into a fight with Moonspawn at Pale without even knowing what was going on. And if he didn't corner Taishren after, they still wouldn't know. Whiskey Jack said Quickben was smart. He didn't know how much he had figured out, but he could be cagey at times. Dujek asked if he was still willing. Whiskey Jack said yes, and that Quickben had made it known he had a lot of faith in Paran, the master of the deck. Dujek asked if he thought that was weird. Whiskey Jack said yes. Paran had been used by a god, walked within Dragnipur, and the blood of a Hound of Shadow flows through his veins. He is unpredictable and impossible to manage, but he does follow orders given to him. But if Lysine thinks she can use him, she might be in for a surprise. Dujek asked if Whiskey Jack liked him. Whiskey Jack said he admired him for his resiliency and his humanity. Dujek said he had faith in him. Whiskey Jack said he was stabbed by his own sword, and Dujek said it was better than someone else's. Whiskey Jack said he wanted to retire when this war was done, but didn't know if Lysine would let him. Dujek said they best not give her a choice then. Whiskey Jack asked if he should drown like Crust and Urko, or killed like Dasim was. There was doubt surrounding those stories, so he would one day track down Duiker and get the story from him. He said they should get some sleep. They leave in 2 days. Dujek told him Taishren wanted to apologize to him. He just hadn't found the right moment yet. Whiskey Jack said he knew where to find him.
This section, I'm not gonna lie, had me confused as fuck. And I know that like a lot of it is just reminiscing of what happened, but like I don't know if it's just one of those things where like maybe I didn't understand Gardens of the Moon as well as I thought I did, or if it's really just one of those things where like I really don't remember a lot of what happened.
Yeah, I understand the confusion because I think I felt that way too. I mean, there definitely was a lot here, and yeah, some of it's trying to recollect things from Gardens and all that. So yeah, I don't know that I really fully grasped everything, but yeah, if we want to start going through our thoughts here.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite scenes in the series. I love this conversation between Dujek and Whiskey Jack. And I really like the way, I don't know if this is a common opinion or not, but I really like the way that Erickson gave us a lot of information in just this small section between the conversation between Dujek and Whiskey Jack. I like that it's done through dialogue and it's not just like explicitly told to us through somebody else's like internal thoughts. It's more of like a conversation between the two, which I like. That's the way that I like to consume information when reading. It just feels more natural, and it also doesn't hold my hand at the same time because it makes me feel like I'm a bystander inside of the room watching these two people talk about something that they already know that I do not know about. So it makes me feel more part of the story. And so I just really think that it's really masterfully done by Erickson in this section. And it also builds on the relationship between these two men as well, who are like the best of friends and really respect each other. And so this was just a great scene for me.
Yeah, you get to be that like fly on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fun when information is presented to you that way. I enjoy that as well. My first thought here, let's see, what exactly did I have? Bran given orders so that the bridge burners would be ready, though they wouldn't know what they'll be ready for, and that's probably the best. I would think he must mean about marching to, the empty dead city, but I can't really think of like a strategic reason why you would do that. So the only thing I can really think of is that they want Panions to think that they're falling for whatever their plan is. I'm not really sure, but that's kind of what I could come up with.
I think it's just to waste time, or not waste time.
Well, if they were going to not waste time, then they would just bypass those cities and go right to Coral, right?
Yeah, maybe, but also isn't the other division heading to Seta as well?
Well, they're heading to different cities, and then they were going to, I think, meet at Morik and then go to Coral from there. I think the upper command must know that they're not going to be liberating these cities, but I get the feeling that like the common foot soldier, they probably don't know that. Like they think they're going to go fight at this city, free the people there, then they're going to march this other city, free the people there, and then they're going to meet the other side of the army, have a bigger fight there, and then they're going to Coral for the big nasty one. It's kind of the feeling I have.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that makes sense because Caladan Brood and that faction are thinking that Whiskey Jack and Dewjack are going to liberate Lest, but in actuality, it sounds like they're just going to skip it.
Well, we're told that they're still marching there, but I don't know what they're going to do once they get there. And they're like, oh, nobody's here. You're going to knock on the door? Or are you just going to be like, well, let's just keep going? I don't know. It confuses me. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'm sure it will once we find out what happens. But right now, not knowing, it's just kind of like, it just doesn't make sense.
Fair enough. I guess I sit with you on that.
Like I said, I just really enjoyed the really small details, and I like that Dewjack told Whiskey Jack to wipe the crumbs out of his beard so he could take him seriously. It just made me laugh because Whiskey Jack is just I can just see it so clearly, him just like with this block of cheese just chewing on it, and he's just taking advantage of his cheese tax, So it's just it's a nice small fun moment for me in this section.
Yeah, just a light little moment, in the midst of, I don't know that I'd necessarily call it like battle plans or anything, but kind of a little bit, but just something to lighten the mood is always nice. Mm-hmm. They're talking about Quick Ben being the biggest blow and wondering what he had planned. I don't know. I still think he's going to be going back to that, like, the tree dude that's holding up the world or whatever he's doing. And he's like, oh, the world's going to end soon in like decades or whatever. I feel like that's where he's going. Just a kind of a gut feeling, I guess.
I guess I don't know. I don't know if it would be like that specific. I mean, he's definitely going away, and I don't know if like him and Paran are doing something and the bridge burners are doing something else, that's the reason why Paran was forced, or not really forced, but had to choose a second. So I think that they're doing something, and I don't know if like maybe Quick Ben and Paran are just going to go to Lest and check it out, and then the bridge burners just go to Seta. I don't know. Like I said before, I think that like while I understand the information, I'm having a hard time connecting it.
I'm kind of feeling like, so you've got these forces split up, and I think when they come together, the other side, Brood side, he's going to be pissed off because he's going to find out that they knew that there was nobody to fight at these cities. And I think that's when Calor's going to try to kill Silver Fox, when they converge again. I mean, it's got to happen pretty quick if it's going to happen, because there's just not a lot of page time left, but that is kind of what I foresee. Am I right? I don't know. We'll have to read and find out. But
right.
Like that's because they talk about how, like, there's secrets between these two forces, that are being split up. And I think that one of those secrets is that, the Malazan side, Whiskey Jack and Dewjack, they know that they're doing all this pointless marching. And I think that's how it's worded in the book at one point, is just this pointless marching. And the other side, I don't think, knows that, and they're going to find out, and they're not going to be happy about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other side is holding secrets too, so.
Yeah. Yeah, what's next here?
I just had a point where Dewjack was saying that it was supposed to be Rake and the Andy and the Elder Gods that were supposed to be getting the crippled god, but instead they're the ones kind of like marching and going at it and getting involved, and it just kind of plays to the entire theme of like all of these Malazan characters who are quite something in the series, having great responsibility thrust upon them when they didn't ask for it and didn't want it, but they're bearing it all the same because it is the right thing to do, which in essence is a lot of the motivations for quite a few of these characters, where it's just like, yeah, I don't want to be doing this, but I have to because who else is going to do it, you know? And it just kind of like it's such a it makes you feel so proud of them, and it makes you just like want. It gives you that like that swell in your heart where you're just like, I would follow these people anywhere. It's like, you know. So it's just I just really I liked that.
Well, it's because right, from what I'm understanding from the section, they're taking on this great responsibility because they don't want Brood to wake up Burn with the hammer. Because if he does that, then Lucine's empire crumbles, right? Am I missing?
The world goes boom.
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of the sense that I got. Is like everything.
Yeah.
You're just starting over, basically. It's like an asteroid hits or something.
It's just kind of, it's a thing on all sides. The Tenniscoury and the Pandandomian are coming in and they're trying to destroy everything. Brood and coming in with, you know, his whole like, hey, I could do this, but there's no guarantee that Burn is going to, you know, recreate the world or anything. We're all just going to die. And then there's the crippled god to think about. So it's just like on all fronts, like just anything that they do is just like not great. Like it's just like we don't have a lot of options here, and which kind of like goes into your point where they're like, oh, this just like this pointless marching, like we're just trying to survive here, we're just trying to make it to the next day, and there's just all of these elements in this book that is making that exceedingly difficult.
I feel like you know, the bridge burners, you know, they're kind of the ants, and you know, like the crippled god's the kid with a magnifying glass, and how do you fight that? Like, but they're gonna do it. They're gonna try because, like you said, it's the right thing to do. So we get this Whiskey Jack and Dujek talking, you know, about the inverted command structure, and Whiskey Jack. So that's, you know, the right people are at with the boots on the ground when Shadow Throne and Cotillion make their move, and Dujek said it wasn't just them, and like, well, okay, so who else then? Like, I don't know if you have thoughts, Justin.
I think that what is happening, and you know, I know that Francesca, you bring this up a little bit later in this section, but I think that like Lucine intentionally inverted the command structure so that the ones closest to the old emperor would be the first to have to deal with her consequences, right? I think that what Dujek is implying by this is Cartheron Crust, Decim Altor, is just the other players that were loyal to the old emperor.
Okay. I had nothing to go on, so I'll take it. Francesca, if you're...
And yeah, I had this, I like this moment when Whiskey Jack was telling them that why then did Quickbend and Callum send Callum after the Empress, and Quickbend knew that Callum needed to see for it for himself in person, face to face with the Empress, and it just kind of like, it's just kind of funny because Quickbend is such a character, and he's just never he never tells anybody his plans. He never tells anybody what's going on inside of his brain. He just kind of like goes and does whatever he needs to do so he can gather all the information. And even when he does have the information, like he still kind of keeps it pretty close to his chest. It would be really irritating if it just didn't work every time. And like it's just like sometimes you just like read his sections and you're just like, would you just tell somebody? Like, would you just share your thoughts with somebody, please? And he just doesn't do it, but then it just ends up like he ends up being right anyway. So it just like, I don't know.
Well, do you think it's because Kalam he's so focused on, from what I remember from Dead House Gates, is that he was so convinced that Lucine was actively trying to get rid of the bridge burners. And in that interaction with Lucine at the end, she kind of confirms that it isn't the bridge burners that she's after. But then there are things throughout this series so far that kind of like contradict what Lucine is saying. And I think that Quickbend is just trying to like allow Clom the opportunity to like clear his head so that he can focus on what Quick Ben needs him to focus on. I don't even really know how to digest that. So, but
yeah,
those
because
are my thoughts. Yeah.
he like it when your bestie knows you better than yourself. Like he just knows Kalab and what he needs, and that's what he needed.
Yeah. The thought that I had, which I thought was really weird, at the beginning of the book, we get the Munug, right? Like the guy who encounters the crippled god and gives him like a custom deck of dragons that he painted, like with all the flaws, right? But it kind of insinuates that Munug was a bridge burner in here. And they're talking about the coincidence that a couple of the bridge burners bumped into the crippled god. So I don't really know how to think of that, but that was one of the things that I had picked out. I don't know if there's any clarity or anything around that, but it kind of seems like the bridge burners are making their own shots in the dark at the crippled god. Is this planned? Was this manipulated? I don't really know.
I don't think I can offer any help, Justin.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where, one, I need to reread Gardens of the Moon, and two, I need to just be patient that things will unfold.
It's hard sometimes. It's hard being patient. It's not easy all the time.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely something to to learn when reading Malazan is just that patience, and it's hard. It's so hard, especially when you're like thinking about like avenues of like theorizing, and then realizing that those theories, you're like, no, that's not something I probably should be theorizing. I probably should be focusing more on this one instead, or like this little detail I shouldn't think about so much, and I should focus more on this one, or like, but it like anything can be anything in Malazan, so it's really hard, and it can get pretty confusing and can get like muddled up a little bit sometimes when you're trying to figure out what's going on.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
We get a little time to think about things here as we just go one chapter at a time, but
Yeah.
it makes it fun.
I really like part of the conversation when Zuzek says that Tayshun was grooming Tattersail to become the master of the deck. I just had like this light bulb moment in my brain when I read that, and I was like, and it's just one of many instances in the series where I look at a sentence and I'm staring at it and I go, how was I stupid enough to not think about this?
Like, I didn't think about it either. Like,
yeah, like it just kind of like blew my mind. I remember when I read it, where I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Why didn't I think of that?
Just eye-opening for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and right, and looking kind of between the lines, right? Like it makes it seem that Tayshren and sequentially Lucine were aware of the crippled god, and therefore were already making plans to try to thwart him, right? Am I interpreting that correctly?
I'm not sure if she knew about it before. I mean, they might have. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've actually read these particular books. But I mean, it certainly is possible that they were already like trying to plan things out and everything.
Because, like, I mean, it makes sense. The same type of. Now that you're pointing it out, I'm like, oh yeah, because like in Gardens of the Moon, she was very knowledgeable of the deck of dragons to the point where, like, I remember a scene where Tayshren is getting a reading from her, and she like interprets everything like spot on, and it's interesting, and I don't really know how to describe it any more than that. And it just kind of like adds another level of kind of manipulation here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't care. I still think Tayshren's an asshole.
Mm-hmm. Is it potential that it's funny that he's using the word grooming, right? Tayshren was grooming Tattersail to become mistress of the deck. Is it possible that like Lucine actually wants the crippled god to become a house? I mean, is it? Yeah, I don't know. There's just so many damn thoughts running through my head right now.
I'm not sure if because that would give him quite a bit of power if he were to become, if that was her end goal. If he was if that was her goal for Tattersail to become mistress of the deck, and then to have her make the crippled god into an actual house, that would give the crippled god quite a bit of power. So So I'm not sure if that would have been her end goal or not.
But
That's an interesting thought.
because I just go back to the reason why she sent Lorne to go unwake Reyes, right, was so that Reyes could take on Rake so that she could conquer Genebacus. Well, I mean, the crippled god is goddamn powerful, so why not give him more powerful so that she could side with him and take out her enemies?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like where my train of thought is going. Like, it seems that Lucine's motivation. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of goes into my other point towards the end of the section though, is that is Lucine really that smart though? Is she really thinking that far ahead? Because from what we learned from Dujek and Whiskey Jack about like the bridge burners and the Siege of Pale and everything, it just seems like she like with Lucine, she's just a giant question mark, right? Like we don't have like her POV, we don't really get inside of her brain, we don't get a lot of her in the series, but we hear so much about her. Like she's very prevalent in these books where like people talk about her and everything, and so you think to yourself, wow, she is just like 5 steps ahead of everybody. She's got a plan for everything. And then you come to like that scene between her and Callum, and then you have this scene in Memories of Ice where Dujek and Whiskey Jack are talking about, the Siege Pale and everything. It just seems like Lucine is trying to keep her head above water. It doesn't seem like she's trying to. She doesn't seem like she has much of a plan, according to the conversation here. It just seems like she is really trying to just make it to the next day and deal with the consequences of what she has to deal with that. Like it's just this domino effect where like decisions are made, then you've got to deal with those consequences, and then those consequences beget more consequences, and then she's just trying to like keep her head above water, as Duchek said. And so I'm not sure if Lucine thinks that far ahead for what you're saying. Like those are just my own thoughts though.
No, absolutely, and it could work with both scenarios with Lucine. Like her being aware of the crippled god could be a very thoughtless task of like, oh well, let's get him on our side so that he could take out whoever we're taking out, right? I don't know. I guess I see it working both ways.
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah,
my thought here, they're saying that they're buying Brood more time without him knowing it, while simultaneously defying the Tlan Imus or intending to do so. And so, like, what are they going to take on the crippled god then?
Who,
because I know, yeah. Well, no, like the bridge burners. Would that be the defying the Tlan Imus that they're referring to, or something else?
I don't know. I think they're talking about the consequences here. I think they're just talking about all of the players that they're in bed with, like Lord of Shadows, obviously, Cotillion and Amanus, rattling the chains of the crippled god, and now buying Brood more time to potentially defend Genebacus. It would be easy for the bridge burners to get caught in friendly fire, and the Malazan to get caught into friendly fire, right? I mean, they're essentially headed in the same direction. And I can't remember what the Tlan specific goal is. And I mean, it seems like they're headstrong into taking out the Panian Seer. Are they just thinking about not even helping with that? Like, let's just go MIA because there's so many things that we're dealing with.
There's definitely a lot of balls in the air, and juggling them is, I don't know, are they going to drop one?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of reminiscent details while making it new at the same time. So, I mean, I like that we're going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I wish that there are moments where I could make more sense of it, but I can't.
Yeah, I would agree with you with Tation. Just the he's an ass. The part where they're saying that Tation really thought he could take down Moonspawn and Rake in the open, just like the cheek, the nerve, the gall, the audacity, and the gumption. Just the whole. It's just very funny to me. Like rereading that part, I'm like, oh.
I wonder. I wonder what she would have done, what Nightchill would have done if she got a hold of Rake's sword. Like, I wonder how different things would have played out if somebody else had a hold of Dragnipur and its power.
That sword in the wrong hands can be, and I think Nightshell would have been the wrong hands.
Well, I mean, doesn't she want to break the sword to free Draconis? So, I mean,
Ooh,
I
yeah.
remember.
kind of seems like, I mean, based on like Nightshell's conversation with Paran while he was on top of the tenement in Capustan, it seems like her motivation is to get the sword. So it kind of just like adds a little bit of history that her motivations really haven't changed. And I guess this is kind of what makes me feel like out of the all of the people that are inside Silver Fox, like she is the one that is the most headstrong. She seems like she's the one that is driving everyone else to agree. I feel like there's a level of manipulation, which kind of brings me back to the comment I made in the first section about like, does Tattersail actually feel that way, or is Nightchill just stuffing her down because she's got shit to do? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's just Nightchill is all about getting this done, and we know that Nightchill is Cruel's sister. It kind of makes it seem like the Elder Gods have been in play a lot longer than we want to give it credit for. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm fighting off a sneeze here or trying to get it out. So,
Stick something up your nose.
yeah, let me just ram my finger up there on camera for you.
Do it.
And then I just had the small note that, Whiskey Jack says that they were headed for another disaster. And I'm just like, I agree. Like, this book's track record is not disputing that.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it feels a little bit like you're just watching a train accident in slow motion. Like,
Yeah, just like, you feel like you're just watching them head towards something really, really awful, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. Like, you just have to keep reading to find out what happens. But it's just like, it just sucks. It just sucks watching them march on, and then you just have this gut feeling of like, I need you to turn around.
yeah,
Yeah, and then like the comment that Dujak is like, the Empire isn't as half as sure as they think they are, and they don't know what they're doing, and it's just like, yeah, that's pretty obvious. Like, they're just your powers of observation are unmatched.
I mean, that feels like me on like a day-to-day basis. Like, it's just
Yeah,
one day at a time. Just, like you've said a couple times, just get through it, just survive.
yeah, and then just the small mention that Perrin has walked within Dragnipur, which is still crazy to me. Like, that still like blows my mind that he was actually like inside of the sword. Like, really cool. And really, I just hear like metal music playing in my head when I read that.
Which song?
Oh, probably something from Lorna Shorn or something.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Did you know, speaking of metal, quick tangent, that there is a metal band called Caladan Brood, and they do actually compose songs based on this book or upon.
I think I've heard
the
that. I haven't listened to them, but I have heard of that. Yeah.
The music is great. I'm not a huge fan of black metal, so like the voice loses it for me. But it was like that like epic Camelot type music. Definitely kind of reminds me of the themes in here.
Nice. Cool. I listen to a lot of Sleep Token, and I think that's I am convinced that Sleep Token just creates songs for Malazan. Like, it just like that there's the for some reason, like, their songs just speak to me. I love them, but like the lyrics in them just really emulate Malazan to me. So I like to listen to Sleep Token sometimes when I'm reading Malazan.
Awesome. You should check out Catatonia. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but
But I will put it on the list.
Their album Sky Void of Stars reminds me of like some Malazan themes as well.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
nice.
I'll check it out too.
I think my next point was when Dujak was saying like, or Whiskey Jack was saying that Perrin, he doesn't follow orders, but if Lucine thinks that she can use him, she might be in for a surprise, which is just interesting to me because Perrin has changed so much since Gardens of the Moon. It's quite a stunning transformation, actually, that he was this boy dreaming of becoming a soldier, And then he eventually, turns into this young man weighted by the life of a soldier and kind of regretting that he ever wanted to be it. And he's like unsure of his decisions, placing his trust in the wrong people, being used by the gods. And then he is suddenly given this power that, instead of being a piece on the board, he can actually change the entire board. So it's just like, it's interesting, this transformation that he has gone through. And I like that the little nod to it here between Whiskey Jack and Blue Jack.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. It's crazy to like have it surmised like that, and to just you recall like the prologue in the Gardens of Moon and just his journey through that book alone. He's definitely come a long way.
Sure. Let's see. So Whiskey Jack's stabbed by his own sword. I don't know. I guess I was kind of confused on that.
I'm not sure what that means either.
I guess that are they referring to Paran in that? But they must be. So yeah, he got stabbed to death and died. Was it actually Whiskey Jack's sword, or is it just talking about like it was on his watch or something?
I'm gonna go with that, because unless he's talking about Bran getting killed by chance, which we know Sari used her little like poker sticks to do it. So I think he's talking about the burden of it happening on his watch type of thing.
Sounds good.
We'll just go with that.
I just had like the small, just whenever I see the name Duiker, it just brings back very painful memories. It's just like, there are only a handful of names in the series that like will bring like instant tears to my eyes, like get me a little bit choked up, and Duiker is like right at the top of that list. It's just like crazy to me how you can read just a single name and then an influx of emotions comes out of that. And it's one of the reasons why I love Malazan so much, is that these characters feel so real. And so just having him casually mentioned here just brings about like the memories and the feelings of what this character means and who this character is. And I really enjoy that, even if it causes me pain.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, 100%. But also, like, as a side note, when I think of Duiker, I think of Coltane as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't.
There's a lot of characters that I think of when I think of Duiker. And I think it's like Duiker, and then I think right beneath that is Squint. Oh my gosh, I can't with Squint. Squint just like it. Oh, I get so upset.
I don't know when, but I can't believe that Duiker is going to be done with the story just in the little
glass vial
he's in. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's got to come back to some capacity at some point. But
I would 100% agree with that. But yeah, let's. I love your last comment here, Francesca.
Yeah, Jason wanted to apologize to Whiskey Jack, but he hadn't found the right moment yet. Yeah, how is that my fucking problem?
Right.
Like, sign me. Okay, why do I have to go to you? It's just Tayshirin just Tayshirin.
Still an asshole. Even if he wants to apologize, still an asshole.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, how genuine is this of Tayshirin? Like, it seems really disingenuous. Like, I can't think that he actually sincerely wants to apologize.
Well, you want to take your last section here, Justin? We've got...
All right. Whiskey Jack left Dujak's tent and approached his tent. He saw a figure waiting for him in front of it. He smiled as he approached Corlott and told her that he missed her. He told her to come on in, as it wouldn't take long to get the lantern lit. She sighed and told him that she wished that he didn't light the lantern, and told him to keep the conversation short, as what she wanted involved no talking. Tee-hee. He closed his arms around her and asked if she had found Silver Fox. Corlott explains that she was unable to do as Silver Fox was able to travel paths that she thought didn't exist. Instead, though, 2 of her undead wolves showed up to escort her home. The Tist Andi explained that these 2 wolves were strange to her. Whiskey Jack recalls his first sight of the Talan Eye, and explains that there's something strangely disproportionate about them. Corlott agrees, but explains that there's something more alarming than their physical attributes, and that was, unlike the Talana Mass, they have eternal sorrow in their hearts. Whiskey Jack said nothing but thought to himself that she sees in the Talan eyes what he sees in hers. Corlott went on saying it was disturbing to see 2 wolves trot together and then simply fade to dusk. Whiskey Jack thought to himself that everyone eventually does, Whiskey Jack says that this conversation was supposed to be short, and then says that they should get to bed. Corlott says that Crone returns, keeping the conversation going, and explains that the Great Raven has observed nothing in Seta, Lest, and Marique. The armies were dividing nonetheless, as both sides of the alliance had things to hide. The closer they could get to Coral, the more problematic it would be to hide those secrets. Whiskey Jack thinks to himself that most of the Tistandi had vanished, likely to return to Moonspawn. Where was the floating city anyway? We will arrive at Coral to see the Panty and Seer already taken out, Soul trapped in Dragnipur. He reminds himself that the Black Moranth have looked for that blasted mountain, but to no avail. He thinks to himself the secrets he's hiding, sending the bridge burners ahead, and they're doing a lot more than that. Whiskey Jack finally said that his heart is hers, and nothing else matters to him. Corlott says that he shouldn't apologize for something that hasn't happened yet. He thought to himself how he was a liar, and in his own way he was apologizing. Later, Whiskey Jack would think back on those words, wishing that they had been cleaner, devoid of hidden intent.
I could literally write an entire PhD thesis on Corlad and Whiskey Jack. I just love them. I absolutely adore their characters. I love their partnership. I love their romantic partnership. I love what Corlad represents, because she is not only just this really badass character, right? She's not only just a character, an entire character in her own right, but she's kind of this representation of the Tistandi and how just so sad these people are, and their longevity, and just the amount of life that they have lived, and the darkness that surrounds them, and her connecting with Whiskey Jack is just this bright light that has otherwise been kind of denied her. And it's not like, I don't know, I think that we just don't get a lot of what's going on within the Tistandi, and I feel like we get a lot here in this book through Corlat. And she's just a great character to follow, and I just love her pairing with Whiskey Jack, and I really enjoy how we're able to get some insight into the Tistandi as a race through her character.
And I'm excited to, going off of that, to learn more about the Tistandi, as I think this darkness that he's seeing in Corlat has something to do with, again, the very little information that we know, but as much as I can surmise, like almost the slaughter of their kin in some way. And it's funny how Whiskey Jack seems to be picking this up, but Corlat seems to be unable to relate at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, because I'm currently reading the Carcanis trilogy, which is it's set like thousands of years before Gardens of the Moon, and it focuses on the Tistandi. So I'm learning a lot about them, and learning a lot about it. Like, if you weren't super interested in the Tistandi, then that series might not be quite as exhilarating, because there is a lot of philosophical ruminations in that book, which I enjoy so much. But they're just a fascinating people, just absolutely fascinating to me. And so seeing them through Corlat in this book was super eye-opening for me, and really helped me to identify with them a lot more, just to see how down they all were. Because they're an immortal, practically an immortal race, if they don't, go into battle or get sick or anything like that, they practically live forever. And so living for as long as they have, and when you see everything that you've already seen, and you know everything that you already know, and you've been with everybody that you've already been, like, it's just like, what else is there? And it just, like, you kind of get that with Animander Rake, where he is just kind of like, I think it was in Gardens of the Moon, where he was just like, I think somebody asked him, why are you doing this? And he was like, kind of gave this really nonchalant, like, I have nothing else to do. Like, what else am I supposed to be doing? And it just, it really, like, gives you a sense of just how long-lived these people are, and tired they are, and it kind of mirrors the Talani Mask in a way, I think, as well, just with their longevity and just like not knowing what else to do with their lives.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. And I mean, I'm very curious about the Tistandi, the 3 different factions that I put together that exist, and how all that takes place, and like, Envy, Rake, Draconis, all of these people, So,
what else you guys got?
well, I think your next. Well, maybe did you already talk? You already talked about this next one, right? You see Dear Lover. I see what I see in news, or what?
Oh yeah. Like I just I kind of already touched on that. I kind of combined the two, but yeah, it's just Corlett doesn't love Whiskey Jack just for like shits and giggles. Like it's real, and it stands for me as like this cry for help that the Tistiani just need to have meaning in their long life, because like Whiskey Jack he's mortal and she's immortal. Like it doesn't seem like a pairing that should work, but it does, and it like once again, it just gives us like insight into the mind of the Tistiani and how they're just kind of like grasping at straws to find something to live for.
Right. Yeah. I can't. You said it so perfectly. I can't add anything to it. Yeah. Going to your next comment here.
Yeah, I just swoon over them. I just love them. I just think they're great. They're like when Whiskey Jack says, "My heart is," it's like, "My heart is yours," and I'm just like, "Okay, but what about me? Is your heart mine?"
Right. Yeah. So
they're just great. I just love them.
Yeah, they both love each other. I mean, I would say with the same amount of passion. I feel like, again, kind of going into my next thing is like she assumes that he's apologizing for something that hasn't happened yet, but he already knows that, at least he surmised, because Whiskey Jack is so damn wise, that both sides are hiding something, and he took a part in that. And I don't know if he feels guilty in kind of his own way. He is apologizing. I don't know if that's relating to like saying that his heart was hers, or what exactly he's referring to, but I'm curious as to what the consequences are going to be when both sides kind of realize that they've hidden things from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Read and find out.
But I mean, like going back to a conversation that Rake had with Brood and Calor about what they had surmised about Whiskey Jack and Dujek being outlawed, Rake kind of took the very, again, as you said, nonchalant stance. If anything, Rake feels like he should save them from Lucine. Maybe there won't be any consequences. But I don't know. I guess, how do lovers on opposing sides that are allied work?
Not well.
So I'm hoping for the best, but I don't think that's going to happen, because again, here's another ominous undertone, and I feel like a lot of the ominousness is kind of focused around Whiskey Jack. So I don't know. Like, I know that at one point he said in this chapter that he wishes to retire, and I don't think that is going to be like a living retirement. I think that he's probably not going to make it past this book.
You think Whiskey Jack's not going to make it past?
I think he's going to die. Yeah, I mean, like,
old.
There's
I guess
so
I haven't
much,
felt that way, but
there's so much like surrounding him, and just these ominous undertones. Like Ikovian earlier, has this dreaded thought that they would never see each other again. This right here, where we get Whiskey Jack thinking back on those words, wishing that they were devoid of hidden intent. Like it gives me the sense that like he's not going to be able to correct that hidden intent. I don't know. It's just
could be a really good call.
Yeah. I'm not going to put a pie on it, but, I mean, that's definitely kind of where I sit.
Well,
but outside of that, I got nothing. I'm ready for it to be brought home.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Last section here. Bran was tired as he watched Quick Ben finish his conversation with Heratus. Bran said the sappers would not be happy. Quick Ben shrugged and said he would talk to Hedge one-on-one. Besides, Hedge considers Fiddler closer than a brother, and with the situation they are in, they need all the help they can get. It was just a matter if the Trigality Trade Guild can get the package there in time. They are insane, after all. Hopefully it was enough. Bran asked if there was more making the trip than just the Moranth munitions. Quick Ben said no. The situation in Seven Cities was a mess, He had done all he could do. How effective it would be is another story. Krupp appeared, and Quickben called him slimy. Krupp said it was only a coincidence that he had heard what he was talking about while he was stalking at his heels. Quickben told the slippery eel that if he made word of this to anyone, he would slit his throat. Krupp wiped his sweaty forehead and said silence is his closest mistress. He withdrew a small glass ball from his handkerchief and dropped it. It broke on the ground, and 2 Bulkerall formed out of the mist. Krupp called them ugly, but Quickben said that was because he looked like them. One of the creatures looked up to Quickben, speaking, "Great! Baruch! Master! Wood! Help!" Krupp spoke, but Quickben told him to shut up. He would welcome Baruch's help, but wondered what his interest was. The rebellion in 7 cities was a Malazan matter after all. The creature's head bobbed as it spoke. "Yes, Baruch! Master! Raraku! Azath! Great!" Paran questioned the word great. It continued speaking. "Great! Danger! Azath! Icarium! More! Coltane! Admire! Honor! Allies! Yes! Yes!" Quickben said this wasn't going to be easy, so they needed to get the details. Paran turned to the sound of an approaching rider. The woman who approached said she would like a word with Captain Paran in private. They left the group, and the rider introduced herself as the Destriant of the Grey Swords. Paran's soldiers have a prisoner, and she is requesting to take him into their care. He knew she meant Annister. She said they were not done with him yet. She asked if he had recovered from his wounds. Paran said he had lost an eye, but he had been attended to by the mages. She said perhaps she needed to talk to Dujek. Paran said that wouldn't be necessary, but he would need to ask a few questions first. She told him to continue. First he asked what they planned to do with him. They did not condone torture, no matter his crimes. If that was their plan, they would deny the request and extend their protection over him. She said torture was a relative term. She asked him to continue. She said what they seek to do, Annister may see as torture, but he will not be harmed. Quite the opposite, actually. Paran said they would take his pain from him, such as Itkovian did to Wrath Fenner, and this scares Annister. She said yes, and Paran asked why. She said it was because he knows nothing else. His entire identity is the pain of his soul. He fears it will end. Paran told her to follow him. She could have him with his blessing. This caught her off guard. She said there was weight behind his word choice. She said it might be advised for him to use caution in the future. He agreed and asked if she was okay to continue. She was, and took the reins to her horse. Paran thought to himself to take it as a warning and nothing else. He did nothing to Annister. He doesn't even know him.
Ooh, we get some concurrence with Deadhouse Gates. So this was cool to read because I know what happens.
Francesca, I think you've got this first thought here, unless that was for the last section. I guess I'm not sure.
No, it's just the, Hedge considers Fiddler closer than a brother. Just the bromance of it all. I just love the bromance. It just makes me happy.
Is it just me, or do these, Tubo Akarala, they remind me of Pain and Panic from Hercules?
That's a good comparison.
I don't know why, they just do. Pain, panic.
They do have that energy.
Yeah.
They got the vibe about them, yeah.
Justin, my first thought here is we really should have, if we would have known at the beginning of this with Krupp and all his cousins and sisters and wives and mistresses, we should have just started a spreadsheet to keep track of them all.
Yeah, who he's all in bed with. You could probably just say the full spectrum.
Yeah, that's true. That was really my only comment on it. I know you've got a couple more here. Francesca, I'd love to hear them.
Erickson and the way he writes his villains is just such my vibe. It's so up my alley. I just love it, where he writes them in such varying shades of gray, and Annister is one of those, where they're saying that they want to be able to give him, take away his pain, which is something that, you would think it would be a good thing, right? Annister sees it as torture, but we're not harming him, we're just taking away his pain. But his pain is all that he has. It's all he's ever known. And so it's his entire identity. So it kind of brings about the philosophical question of who are we without our pain, especially if that pain is all that you know. And it just makes you, even though that Annister is this character that has done some pretty awful things, you kind of you know what his background is, you know where he comes from and what he's done, and then he fears that his whole soul is going to be taken away because all he knows is pain, and so it just it makes you feel bad for him. It does, like it just makes you feel bad for him despite what he has done, and that is something that I find a common theme in Erikson's character writing, is that of course there are characters in here that are just, you know, the butt crack of characterization, but like you just can't stand them. They're like they're the equivalent of, you know, gas station sushi, but like you can't like there are other ones that you just cannot help but feel sorry for and feel bad for, and I think that Annister is just one of those characters.
I don't really know how to feel about him at times. Like, you know, he's kind of thrust into this role a little bit, it feels like, and what do you do? But yeah, at the same time, you know, like you said, where it's he doesn't know a different way. I don't know. It's complicated, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not something of like a one size fits all. Like of course, like everybody feels differently about everybody else, but it just like it speaks to Erikson's ability to write, that many people can have so many different opinions about the characters that he has written, and how everybody can come together and find a different way of seeing things from what they've written. It's almost like reading poetry, where like, if you know, like when you're reading poetry at different stages in your life, it can mean something different to you. It's always changing, and I feel like that's the same way in Erikson's writing. Like no matter, like it kind of depends on where you are in your own life. I think that his writing can speak somewhat differently to you, and it can really change entire characters, in my opinion, depending on what you have experienced or what you have not. And I find that incredible. I just think that just speaks to Erikson's ability to write.
It is fantastic. I mean, I think we've both enjoyed it a ton so far. And, you know, now, even though we're almost done with this third book, it still kind of feels like we've hardly read anything. Or that's how I feel anyways at times.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm in I've finished Novels of the Malazan Empire, I've finished Malazan Book of the Fallen, and I'm currently on Carcarnis. And in Carcarnis, I feel like I know nothing. Like I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew nothing. Like it's just like it expands so much. And not only is Erikson a master of world building, but he is so good with characterization, which is the reason why I made this comment about like with Annister, is just like he's just not this grade A villain. Like he's got some depth to him that there is like room for discussion about it, and a lot of Erikson's characters are like that, where there is like you don't necessarily agree with what they're doing, but you kind of understand where they're coming from, kind of thing. And it just, whether you agree with it or not, just means that it's a character worthy of talking about. So it's just that he's just an interesting character, and I liked how this section of the book here kind of gives us that little bit of insight with the potential of his pain being taken away.
Nicely said.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
But yeah, that's kind of it for me.
Agree 100% on that one.
Was that all? Did we make it all the way through here?
We did.
Yeah.
Wow, we did it. Yeah, it was a fairly long episode, even for us. But you know, thank you for taking the time here with us. It really does mean a lot when we can get somebody on. You know, whether you've read the whole series or almost all of it, or if you've only, you know, maybe they've read a book or two more than us, but to take the time and talk with us and have that conversation really means a lot. Thank you.
This was super fun. I really enjoyed it. It's great to be able to like bounce theories and ideas and just be able to gush about it with people who are like-minded.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the conversation, and we'll have to do it again sometime when we're a little further along, and we'll have more to talk about for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you want to let people know where they can find you, anything like that, any closing thoughts you have?
Yeah, I'm really active on my Instagram. You can find me under Witch King Reads. That pretty much everything on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm mostly active on my Instagram, but I can be reached on Twitter as well. And that's where I gush about Malazan as well. Like I post pretty much almost Malazan consistently. So
well, I would tell people to check out your book as well. I guess I'm curious, did Malazan have any impact on your writing or anything like that?
Most definitely. I really love Erickson's internal monologuing and his characterization. And I really enjoy character driven stories. And so I wrote a character driven story and also the grim dark aspect of it as well. I really enjoy just the darker themes. And so I definitely have that in Ethless Reach. And I just really enjoy the emotional journey that Erickson puts his characters through. And so that is something that I really latched onto when I was writing as well. So I definitely drew inspiration from that as well. But yeah, he's been quite a big inspiration to me, I would say, in writing. It's a good book, but that's just my opinion. I mean, I only wrote it, so.
That's fair then. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I would want to write a book and be like, yeah, that was hot garbage or something, you know.
So terrible.
I would have a high opinion of it if I wrote a book too, I think, whatever it was. Well, Justin, anything from you? Anything, any other thoughts?
No, I feel satisfied, and we'll probably get to, I don't know, I think there's like a little over 20-ish pages in this next one, so I'll probably rock that out sometime later tonight.
Likewise. Well, again, thank you so much for being here with us. It'll probably be a few weeks till this comes out, but we'll definitely tag you on Twitter when it comes out and let you know.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Sounds good. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
Not a problem at all. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest.